Joy is not hidden in money, fame, or the approval of others. It does not depend on luck, nor does it wait behind the door of some perfect future. True happiness is not something you stumble upon. It is something you build within. Life, with its chaos and uncertainty, will always tempt you to believe that peace lies elsewhere, in possessions, in recognition, in control. But each of these promises is fragile, breaking the moment life shifts. Stoicism offers a harder truth, but also a freer one. You do not need the world to serve you in order to smile. You do not need perfect circumstances to feel alive. What you need is strength of mind, a spirit that stands tall even when everything around it falls. Very little is needed to make a happy life. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, it is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Happiness, then, is not found in the external world, but in the way you choose to meet it. It is not passive, not random, not given by fortune. It is a practice, a discipline, that you train each day like a muscle. You cannot control what happens, but you can always control how you think, how you respond, and how you rise. This guide is written to show you how. It will not promise an easy path. Instead, it will invite you into a stronger way of living, one where joy is unshakable, because it is built inside you, beyond the reach of chance or loss. What follows are the principles of Stoic happiness, tools to help you say with clarity and courage, I carry peace within me, and nothing outside can take it away. The world often tempts us to spend our strength in places where it will be wasted. We carry worries like heavy stones, thinking that if we hold them tightly enough, they will somehow change shape. We replay words said by others, hoping that by brooding over them, we might rewrite the past. We fear outcomes we cannot command, as though anxiety could alter destiny. And yet, no matter how much energy we spend on what lies outside us, life moves in its own rhythm. To cling is to suffer. To release is to live. The Stoics taught that freedom begins the moment we draw a clear line between what is ours and what is not. This is not an abstract philosophy, but a daily practice that sharpens the mind and lightens the heart. At its core, life can be divided into two realms, the realm of control and the realm of no control. One belongs to you completely, the other never did. To confuse them is to guarantee frustration. To separate them is to step into peace. What lies outside your control? The opinions of others, the turn of fortune, the health of your body, the passing of time, the unfolding of tomorrow. These are not yours to command. You may influence them, sometimes greatly, but you cannot own them. They shift like the wind, answer to no master, and laugh at your attempt to cage them. What lies within your control? Your thoughts, your choices, your actions, nothing else. And though this realm may seem small compared to the endless world outside, it is, in fact, vast enough to shape the quality of your entire existence. Your mind is a citadel. Within it, you can either build chains or wings. You cannot stop the storm, but you can decide whether to curse it or learn from it. You cannot decide how others treat you, but you can decide how you treat yourself. You cannot write the whole story of your life, but you can write the way you carry each chapter. The mistake most people make is to confuse influence with control. You may eat with care, exercise with discipline, and still your health may fail. You may work diligently, speak kindly, and still others may betray you. You may prepare carefully, yet fate may tear your plans apart in a single night. To believe that careful effort guarantees favorable outcomes is to set yourself up for despair. The Stoic way is different. Put full effort into what is yours, then release what is not. The effort is yours, the result is not. This discipline is not about passivity. It is not about giving up on the world. Rather, it is about aligning your energy with what truly belongs to you. If you waste your power on what you cannot govern, you live like a soldier who fires arrows into the ocean. But when you focus only on what is within, your strength sharpens. You become unshakable, not because the world is soft, but because your mind is disciplined. Thoughts are the first realm of control. Every feeling you carry, every mood that rises and falls begins as a thought. The words you speak to yourself silently shape the quality of your days. If your thoughts dwell on resentment, life will feel poisoned even when nothing is wrong. If your thoughts dwell on gratitude, life will feel abundant even in times of lack. To govern your thoughts is not to deny reality, but to choose the lens through which you view it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not writing poetry, he was giving instructions. The practice begins by noticing the silent story you tell yourself. Are you rehearsing fears? Are you repeating insults? Are you dwelling on what cannot be changed? This awareness is the first step to reclaiming your mind. Once you notice, you can redirect. The thought may arise, but you do not need to follow it into darkness. You can let it pass as a traveler passes through a city without staying. This is discipline, to hold your mind steady, even when it wants to wander. Choices are the second realm. Life places before you countless situations where you cannot command the circumstances, but you can choose your response. A harsh word may be spoken to you. That is beyond your control. But whether you answer with anger or with calm, that is yours. Misfortune may strike without warning. That is beyond your control. But whether you meet it with despair or with courage, that is yours. Each choice is a small brushstroke, and together they paint the canvas of your character. The difficulty lies in remembering that no one can take this power from you. They may strip away comfort, fortune, health, even freedom of movement, but they cannot force your choice of response. Epictetus, born a slave, understood this better than most. Though his body belonged to another, his mind was his own. He taught that true freedom is not the absence of chains, but the refusal to let chains enter the soul. Actions form the third realm of control. The Stoics believe that philosophy must not stay in words, it must be lived. You cannot decide whether tomorrow will favor you, but you can decide how you act today. You cannot dictate the behavior of others, but you can act with justice, courage, and self-control regardless. Each action, however small, builds a habit, and habits form the architecture of your life. When you act with discipline consistently, you create a foundation that no storm can wash away. It is tempting to ask why focus so much on this distinction between control and no control. The answer is simple, because most suffering is born from confusion. When we spend our days trying to control what we cannot, we exhaust ourselves. When we neglect what we can control, we weaken our inner strength. Life becomes a cycle of frustration and regret. But when we turn our attention firmly to our own thoughts, choices, and actions, life simplifies. The noise quiets, the path clears. This does not mean indifference to the world. To the contrary, by focusing on what you can control, you become more effective in the world. You plant seeds without demanding harvests. You act with integrity without needing applause. You love without needing to own. This way of living frees you from the desperation of outcomes and roots you in the dignity of action. The world may still wound you, but it cannot break you, because you never placed your peace in its hands. Consider anger. Most anger arises from the belief that the world should obey you. Someone offends you, delays you, misunderstands you, and you react as though they have stolen your peace. But they cannot. The only theft possible is the one you allow. When you hand over your mind to irritation by recognizing that you cannot control others, you remove the source of anger's fuel. You respond with clarity instead of heat. This is not weakness, it is mastery. Or consider fear. Fear thrives when you try to govern the uncertain. The mind races into the future, creating endless scenarios it cannot control. You fear death, loss, failure, rejection, all shadows of things beyond your command. The cure is not denial but focus. Return to what is yours, your preparation, your courage, your present action. Beyond that, let go. Fear withers when starved of false control. Even sorrow finds a new shape when viewed through this lens. Grief is natural, for we are human, but suffering deepens when we insist that life should have been different. We mourn not only the loss, but the imagined world where the loss never came. The Stoic practice is not to silence grief, but to see clearly. This too was never ours to control. What remains ours is how we honor the memory, how we continue with strength, how we live in a way that reflects gratitude rather than despair. This way of life requires daily training. Each morning you can ask, what belongs to me today? Not in the world outside, but in the realm within. Your thoughts, your choices, your actions, nothing else. Throughout the day, return to this line whenever you feel disturbed. Am I suffering because of what is not mine? If so, release it. Am I neglecting what is mine? If so, take responsibility. This is the rhythm of the Stoic path. In time, the distinction becomes second nature. You stop expecting others to behave a certain way. You stop demanding that fortune favor you. You stop fighting the flow of events as though you could command the universe. And in this letting go, you discover an unexpected freedom. You find joy not because life is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. The world remains chaotic, unpredictable, and often unjust. But within the small circle of your own control lies enough power to build a steady life. The discipline of thought guards your peace. The strength of choice protects your dignity. The clarity of action anchors you in meaning. Together they form a fortress that no external force can conquer. Thus, the great paradox of Stoic happiness is revealed. By narrowing your focus to the few things you truly control, you open yourself to a vast and unshakable joy. By surrendering what was never yours, you reclaim what always was. And in that reclamation lies the freedom every human heart longs for. Not the fragile happiness of possessions or praise, but the enduring happiness of a mind at peace. When you learn to see the limits of control, something remarkable happens. The mind grows lighter. You stop fighting storms you cannot calm. You stop begging the world to obey your desires, and instead you stand rooted in your own strength. Yet there is another weight that must be lifted if you wish to be free. The weight of externals, wealth, reputation, possessions, praise, the judgment of others. All of these may seem precious, but they are not the foundation of happiness. They are passing ornaments, not the substance of life. The heart aches because it mistakes these things for necessities. We crave wealth as though it guarantees security. We cling to status as though it proves our worth. We chase possessions as though they promise permanence. But every one of these slips through the hands in time. To build happiness on them is to build on shifting ground. When the tide turns, so too does your peace. The Stoics teach that the only way to remain steady is to see these externals for what they are, indifferent. Wealth is the first illusion. Money can provide comfort, but it cannot grant tranquility. You may sit in a palace and still feel restless. You may dine on fine meals and still hunger for peace. Money extends the reach of your influence, but it cannot change the nature of your mind. It can purchase luxuries, but not freedom from fear or envy. The poor man may despair because he lacks it, but the rich man also despairs because he fears to lose it. To make wealth the measure of happiness is to set yourself up for endless anxiety. True wealth is contentment with little, for then nothing can be stolen from you. Status is another trap. Titles, positions, and recognition seem to raise us above others, but they are fragile. Today you may be honored, tomorrow forgotten. The applause of the crowd fades as quickly as it rises. If your peace depends on how others see you, then you are never truly free. You live not for yourself, but as a slave to their opinions. The Stoics remind us that dignity lies not in titles but in character. A simple life lived with justice and courage is greater than the hollow glory of fame. To seek honor is to put your happiness in the hands of strangers. To live with integrity is to keep it in your own. Possessions are perhaps the most deceptive. They sparkle with the promise of satisfaction, but once obtained, their shine fades. The new object soon becomes ordinary, and the hunger for more returns. This cycle of desire never ends, for the mind that looks outward for joy will never be satisfied. Every possession is vulnerable to theft, loss, or decay. The more you cling, the more you fear. Freedom comes not from owning much, but from needing little. When you no longer measure your worth by what you hold, you find a kind of abundance that no loss can threaten. The opinions of others often cut the deepest. Praise lifts us, criticism wounds us, and we spend much of our life trying to win approval or escape judgment. Yet opinions shift with moods, with trends, with misunderstanding. To base your happiness on such unstable ground is to hand your peace to every passerby. You cannot control what others think or say, but you can control your own judgment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should care more about what we think of ourselves than what the world thinks of us. For the world does not walk in your shoes nor carry your conscience. True happiness does not come from being admired, but from living in alignment with your principles. To see externals as indifferent does not mean rejecting them entirely. Wealth can be used wisely. Status can be used for service. Possessions can bring comfort, and kind words can encourage. The Stoic view is not that these things are evil, but that they are not essential. They are tools, not treasures. If they come, use them with gratitude. If they leave, release them without despair. What matters is that you do not confuse them with the root of joy. This perspective also reshapes how you interact with others. When you no longer chase approval, you can speak honestly. When you no longer envy possessions, you can celebrate freely with those who have them. When you no longer fear the loss of wealth or status, you can act with courage, even at personal cost. Indifference to externals is not coldness. It is the foundation of freedom. It allows you to love more deeply, for your love is no longer a bargain for praise or security. It allows you to act more justly, for you are no longer swayed by rewards or punishments. There is strength in remembering how fragile externals are. Wealth can vanish in a single misfortune. Reputation can crumble with one rumor. Possessions can be lost in a fire, and praise can turn into blame with a shift of the crowd. If your peace depends on these, then your peace is as fragile as they are. But if you see them as indifferent, their loss does not break you. You grieve the loss, but you do not lose yourself. You accept change as part of life's rhythm, and you remain rooted in what is yours alone. Your thoughts, your choices, your actions. Many spend their whole lives chasing externals, only to realize too late that they were running in circles. They believed happiness was just beyond the next raise, the next purchase, the next compliment. Yet, when they reached each milestone, happiness slipped further ahead. The Stoics call this the endless chase of the insatiable mind. The only way to stop running is to step off the track entirely, to turn inward, and to build joy from within. This shift does not come overnight. It requires practice. Each day you will be tempted by glittering promises, advertisements whispering that a new product will complete you, peers flaunting achievements that stir envy, voices suggesting that worth is measured in applause. Each temptation is a test. You cannot silence the world, but you can train your mind to answer. This is indifferent. It does not add to or subtract from my true happiness. What matters is how I think, what I choose, and how I act. With time, this training becomes natural. The loss of wealth no longer unravels your peace. The lack of recognition no longer wounds your worth. The shifting opinions of others no longer control your actions. You walk with a lighter step because you are no longer dragging chains that were never yours to carry. And in this freedom, happiness appears. Not loud or dramatic, but steady and enduring. The paradox is that once you cease to depend on externals, you can enjoy them more fully when they come. You no longer clutch them in fear, so you can hold them with gratitude. You no longer demand that they make you whole, so you can use them wisely and generously. Wealth becomes a tool for kindness, not a measure of self. Status becomes an opportunity for service, not a source of pride. Possessions become conveniences, not idols. Praise becomes a pleasant echo, not a lifeline. By placing them in their proper place, you liberate yourself to live with clarity. There is also a deeper freedom that arises when externals lose their grip on you. You are no longer easy to manipulate. Those who seek to control through rewards or punishments find they have little power. because your peace does not depend on what they offer or threaten. You cannot be bribed with wealth, flattered with status, or intimidated with loss. This independence makes you steady in times of trial and just in times of temptation. Happiness, then, is not found by clinging to what can be lost, but by holding firmly to what cannot. Wealth fades, status shifts, possessions break, and opinions change. But your mind, your character, your daily actions, these remain yours as long as you live. To place your joy here is to build on rock, not sand. The path is demanding, for it requires that you confront the illusions that most people spend their lives protecting. It asks you to see wealth without envy, status without desire, possessions without pride, and opinions without fear. Yet in giving up these illusions, you gain something greater. A peace that does not depend on chance, a dignity that does not bow to the crowd, and a joy that endures through both fortune and loss. To live this way is to live lightly, not because life is without burdens, but because you no longer carry those that are not yours. It is to walk freely, not because the road is easy, but because your steps are not chained to false treasures. It is to find happiness, not as a gift from the world, but as the natural result of seeing clearly and living wisely. And so the practice continues, each day, reminding yourself of what matters, each moment, choosing to place happiness where it belongs. Externals will rise and fall, but the mind trained in indifference remains steady. In that steadiness lies the heart of Stoic joy, the kind of joy that cannot be bought, stolen, or broken, because it rests not on what changes, but on what endures. When you finally see externals for what they are, the ground under your feet feels different. You no longer cling to wealth as if it holds your future, nor do you bend beneath the weight of other people's opinions. Freed from this grip, the question that naturally rises is simple yet profound. If joy is not found in possessions or status, then where does it come from? The Stoics answered with clarity. It comes from virtue, not in fleeting pleasures, not in comfort, but in the steady strength of character, courage, wisdom, justice, and self-discipline. These are not ornaments to decorate life, but the very foundation of a life worth living. Courage is the strength that allows you to stand firm when life presses against you. Fear often whispers that retreat is safer, that silence is easier, that compromise will protect you. But every time fear decides, your freedom shrinks. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act rightly despite it. When the future is uncertain, courage allows you to take the next step without demanding a guarantee. When you are tested by pain, courage steadies your will so you can endure with dignity. This is why Stoics saw courage as essential. Without it, wisdom remains idle, justice remains unpracticed, and self-discipline collapses at the first trial. Courage carries you forward when comfort would hold you back. Wisdom is the compass that guides action. It is not simply knowledge, for knowledge can be misused. Wisdom is the art of knowing what matters and choosing accordingly. The world is full of noise, endless distractions that call for your attention. Without wisdom, you spend your days chasing shadows, confusing appearance for reality. Wisdom clears the path by distinguishing the useful from the harmful, the temporary from the lasting, the trivial from the essential. It teaches you to look beneath the surface of things and to act with foresight. The wise person knows that anger solves little, that envy eats the soul, that greed leaves one empty. Wisdom does not make life easier, but it makes life clearer, and with clarity, peace follows. Justice is the virtue that binds your life to something greater than yourself. It is the recognition that you are part of a community, that your actions ripple outward to affect others. Justice is more than obeying laws. It is treating others with fairness, dignity, and respect. It is choosing honesty, even when lies would benefit you. Choosing kindness, even when cruelty would be easier. Choosing integrity, even when no one is watching. Without justice, life becomes a pursuit of selfish gain, and such a life always ends in emptiness. To live justly is to align your actions with the common good. to see your happiness as linked to the well-being of others. The Stoics believe that a life without justice is no life at all, for it betrays the very nature of humanity. Self-discipline is the fortress of the soul. It is the ability to govern your desires, to master your impulses, to direct your energy toward what truly matters. Without discipline, pleasure becomes addiction, ambition becomes obsession, and freedom becomes slavery to appetite. Discipline is not denial, it is control. It is the strength to say no when indulgence tempts, to say yes when duty calls, to remain steady when emotions threaten to overthrow reason. The disciplined person is free because they are not pulled apart by every desire. They live with purpose, not by accident. And in that purpose lies a deeper joy than any indulgence could ever give. Each virtue supports the others. Courage without wisdom can become reckless. Wisdom without justice can become cold. Justice without discipline can collapse under temptation. Discipline without courage can become rigid. Together, they form a harmony, a strength of character that is resilient in every circumstance. This is why the Stoics placed virtue at the center of happiness. Externals may come and go. Fortune may rise and fall, but virtue belongs entirely to you. It cannot be stolen, it cannot decay, and it does not depend on the opinion of others. When you live with these virtues, happiness ceases to be a pursuit and becomes a byproduct. Joy flows naturally from a mind that is courageous, wise, just, and disciplined. Even in hardship, you feel a quiet strength, for you know that misfortune cannot rob you of the only thing that truly matters, the quality of your character. Pain may visit, but it does not own you. Loss may wound, but it does not define you. In virtue, you find an anchor that holds even when the sea of life is raging. This way of life transforms how you see both success and failure. Success in the Stoic sense is not measured by wealth or recognition, but by whether you acted with virtue. If you faced difficulty with courage, you succeeded, even if the outcome was not what you wished. If you acted with justice, you succeeded, even if others failed to appreciate it. Failure, then, is not misfortune or defeat. It is the abandonment of virtue. To act without integrity, to betray wisdom, to neglect courage, to indulge without discipline, these are the true losses, for they erode the very core of who you are. Living by virtue also creates harmony between inner and outer life. Often people feel torn, pulled between what they know is right and what is easy or tempting. This inner conflict breeds anxiety and restlessness. But when virtue governs, there is no such division. Your choices align with your principles. Your actions reflect your values. Your words match your intentions. This unity is a powerful source of peace. There is no need to wear masks, no fear of being exposed, no endless calculating of appearances. You are whole, and that wholeness is freedom. Virtue also reshapes how you relate to others. Instead of competing for status, you cooperate for justice. Instead of envying possessions, you value character. Instead of resenting criticism, you use it as a mirror for wisdom. Relationships deepen when they are built on trust, respect, and fairness, rather than on manipulation or selfish gain. You learn to love not for what others give you, but for who they are. This love is steady because it does not depend on changing externals, but on the enduring worth of the soul. The pursuit of virtue requires practice, not perfection. You will stumble, you will fall short. You will feel the pull of fear, desire, and pride. But each stumble is an opportunity to return to the path. The Stoics did not expect flawless saints. They expected human beings willing to train their minds and hearts daily. Each act of courage strengthens courage. Each act of wisdom strengthens wisdom. Each act of justice strengthens justice. Each act of discipline strengthens discipline. Over time, these small acts weave together into a character that is strong, steady, and joyful. The world often offers shortcuts to happiness, wealth, pleasure, recognition, indulgence. They shine brightly but fade quickly. Virtue is not flashy, and it asks for effort, but it alone endures. It does not fade with age, it does not depend on luck, and it does not crumble under loss. To choose virtue is to choose a form of happiness that no storm can uproot. In the end, the question is simple. Will you spend your life chasing what you cannot keep, or will you build your life upon what cannot be taken? Wealth may vanish, status may fall, possessions may break, and opinions may shift. But courage, wisdom, justice, and discipline remain yours until your final breath. They are the true riches of life, the real treasures of the soul. To cultivate them is to step into the deepest joy possible for a human being. The joy of a life lived well, a life anchored not in chance but in character. And so the journey continues, not outward toward fleeting rewards, but inward toward the unshakable strength of virtue. This is where the Stoics pointed. This is where freedom lies. And this is where happiness becomes more than a passing feeling. It becomes a way of being. When you recognize virtue as the highest good, life itself begins to feel lighter. You no longer measure yourself by what you own, by the shifting voices of others, or by the fragile promises of fortune. Instead, you measure by the steadiness of your courage, the clarity of your wisdom, the fairness of your justice, and the strength of your discipline. Yet, even with this foundation, there is another trap that can quietly undermine peace. The trap of outcomes. For even when you act with virtue, the world may not reward you. Effort may not bring success. Intention may not create recognition. The Stoic path reminds us that joy is not tied to results, but to the process itself. To live well is not to guarantee victory, but to give full devotion to what you can control. Your effort, your intention, and your presence in each moment. This shift is not easy, because human beings are taught from childhood to prize results. The grade on the test, the number in the account, the applause of the crowd. These are made into symbols of worth. Effort alone is often dismissed, as though the only value lies in visible success. Yet results are always hostage to chance. You may prepare carefully and still fail. You may labor for years and see no recognition. You may act with honesty and still be misunderstood. If your peace depends on outcomes, then your happiness will be as unstable as fortune itself. The Stoics urge us to reverse this thinking. They ask, what belongs to you? Not the outcome, but the effort. Not the applause, but the integrity of intention. Not the trophy, but the discipline of showing up fully. When you begin to care more about the quality of your process than the shape of the result, you step into freedom. Success becomes doing your work with honesty, courage, and care. Failure becomes abandoning these virtues. No matter how bright the outcome might look to others, focusing on process changes the very texture of daily life. Every action becomes an opportunity to practice excellence. Washing the dishes with attention and calm becomes as meaningful as completing a grand project. For in both cases, the same virtues are at play: discipline, presence, and integrity. When the focus shifts inward, you no longer need to compare your results to others, because the measure is always within. Did I act with sincerity, with care, with justice? This makes life both simpler and deeper. This mindset also shields you from despair in times of difficulty. When the harvest fails, despite careful tending, you can still hold peace, for you know your work was honest. When a project collapses despite your effort, you need not feel broken, for the effort itself was meaningful. When others reject or misunderstand you, their response does not cancel the dignity of your action. By anchoring happiness in process, you make it independent of fortune's whims. Effort carries its own kind of beauty. It is the quiet strength of persistence, the willingness to keep walking, even when the destination is uncertain. To give full effort is to honor life itself, to treat each moment as worthy of your best, regardless of what it returns. The Stoics saw life not as a stage where results determine your value, but as a field of training where effort shapes your soul. Each attempt to live with clarity strengthens you, whether or not the world notices. Intention is equally vital. Actions may look similar from the outside, but intention separates virtue from vanity. To give a gift for praise is different from giving a gift for love. To speak truth for power is different from speaking truth for integrity. When intention is pure, The action itself is noble, even if misunderstood. When intention is corrupted, the action is hollow, even if praised. By focusing on intention, you ensure that your life is guided by what is real, not by appearances. This shift also reshapes ambition. Ambition, when tied to outcomes, breeds restlessness and dissatisfaction. The goal is always ahead, and the present is never enough. But ambition tied to process becomes a form of devotion. You strive not for the uncertain fruit of results, but for the certain practice of effort. Each day becomes complete in itself, because the act of living well is the reward. This is how a Stoic can feel fulfilled, even in difficulty, because the measure of success lies always within reach. The quality of today's choices. The obsession with results often breeds comparison. We look sideways at others, measuring ourselves by their wealth, their status, their achievements. Yet when process is your focus, comparison fades. Another's success does not diminish you, nor does another's failure elevate you. Your path is your own, and the only question is whether you are walking it with clarity and strength. This independence from comparison is a powerful form of peace, for it liberates you from the endless race of appearances. Patience also grows naturally when process takes priority. Outcomes often take time, and impatience breeds frustration. But when you value the effort itself, each step holds meaning. You learn to honor the work of today without needing the promise of tomorrow. This steadiness makes you resilient, for you are not constantly straining toward results, but fully engaged in the present task. Even failure is transformed by this mindset. When you define success by outcome, failure feels like defeat. But when you define success by effort and intention, failure becomes a teacher. It shows where your process can be improved, where your virtues can be strengthened. Failure becomes not an end, but a step in the practice of living well. It loses its sting because it no longer defines your worth. This way of living demands honesty with yourself. It is easy to claim that effort was sincere, when in truth, you held back. The Stoics teach that true peace comes only when you give your whole self to the present task. To act half-heartedly and then blame fortune for poor results is self-deception. To act fully and accept whatever follows is strength. This honesty with effort is liberating, for it removes the constant need to justify outcomes. The freedom that comes from this shift is profound. You are no longer chained to luck, no longer at the mercy of circumstances. You live in alignment with your principles, and this alignment is unshakable. The applause may never come, the fortune may never arrive, the recognition may never appear, and yet you remain steady, because the true reward was never outside. It was always in the act of living well, in the daily practice of courage, wisdom, justice, and discipline. When effort and intention become the measure, even the smallest acts take on dignity. A kind word spoken with sincerity, a task completed with care, a duty carried out with patience. These become victories in themselves. Life ceases to be a chase after distant trophies and becomes a series of present triumphs. Each day becomes complete, not because it brought visible success, but because you lived it with clarity. The Stoic way is not about withdrawing from the world or abandoning goals. It is about engaging fully with life while placing your heart in what cannot be taken. You still work, you still strive, you still care about outcomes, but you do not make them your master. You let outcomes be what they are, uncertain, unstable, outside your command. Your peace is built on something stronger, the steady rhythm of honest effort and pure intention. Thus, the path grows clearer. Focus on the process and let go of the rest. Live with devotion to the task at hand, not to the prize at the end. Let your joy come from the integrity of your effort, not from the shifting winds of fortune. In this way, you discover a freedom that results can never offer. You find happiness not as a distant goal, but as a companion in every step. For happiness is born each moment you live with full presence and unwavering intention. And so the lesson unfolds. Life is not about securing victories, but about living with strength in every action. Fortune may play its games, outcomes may rise and fall, but the process remains yours. Care for it, honor it, and you will find a happiness that no outcome can grant. and no outcome can take away. When you learn to care for the process instead of the outcome, a quiet strength begins to grow. You no longer depend on fortune's gifts, nor do you let failure crush your spirit. Effort itself becomes its own reward, and intention becomes the measure of your life. Yet even with this discipline, the human heart often slips into complacency. It takes for granted what surrounds it, assuming that the people and comforts you hold today will remain tomorrow. This blindness weakens gratitude and makes the soul unprepared for life's sudden turns. The Stoics offered a remedy for this: the practice of premeditatio malorum, the deliberate reflection on loss and hardship. By contemplating what could be taken, you awaken a deeper appreciation for what is here now. This exercise is not born from pessimism, but from clarity. Life is fragile, and pretending otherwise only deepens shock when change comes. To reflect on loss is not to call it into being, but to prepare the soul for the truth that nothing outside your mind is permanent. The Stoics believed that by reminding yourself of life's uncertainties, you would learn to hold every blessing with reverence rather than entitlement. Consider the people closest to you. Each conversation, each embrace, each shared laugh feels ordinary in the moment, but they are treasures that will not last forever. To remind yourself that these bonds could end at any time sharpens your presence with them. Words spoken in kindness become urgent. Attention becomes undivided. Love becomes active rather than delayed. The awareness of impermanence does not darken love. It intensifies it. Every moment becomes an opportunity to express gratitude before silence arrives. The same practice applies to possessions. Everything you own, no matter how secure it seems, can be taken by accident, disaster, or decay. When you remind yourself of this truth, possessions lose their hold over your heart. You learn to enjoy them while they are with you, but remain prepared to release them without despair. A cup that may break is cherished more tenderly. A home that could be lost is cared for with gratitude. This mindset strips away the illusion of permanence and teaches you to treat every object as a temporary guest rather than a permanent treasure. Health is another realm where negative visualization holds power. Most people wake each morning and walk, eat, breathe, and speak without reflecting on the silent miracle of these abilities. Yet illness or injury can strip them away in an instant. To reflect on this possibility awakens a deep appreciation for what you now possess. To eat without pain, to walk without aid, to see the sunrise with clear eyes, these are not guaranteed. By contemplating their potential loss, you learn to live each day with gratitude for what the body still grants. This does not breed fear but humility, reminding you that health is not owed, only lent. Fortune itself is fleeting. Wealth may vanish in a single misstep. Status may crumble with one rumor. Comfort may dissolve without warning. To remind yourself daily of how fragile these externals are frees you from arrogance when you hold them and despair when they are gone. You stop taking fortune's gifts as permanent signs of success and instead see them as temporary tools to be used with wisdom. This perspective builds resilience for when loss comes. You are not destroyed by surprise. You have already prepared the soul for its arrival. The discipline of negative visualization also strengthens courage. Fear grows in the shadow of the unknown. But when you bring hardship to mind deliberately, you strip it of some of its terror. By rehearsing in thought what you dread, you make it less foreign, less overwhelming. You may reflect on poverty, on exile, on rejection, on failure, and in doing so, discover that life remains livable even with these losses. This training hardens the spirit, so when adversity comes, it meets not a panicked mind, but a prepared one. Gratitude is the natural fruit of this practice. When you live with the awareness that everything could change, you no longer sleepwalk through life. You notice the warmth of a meal, the presence of a friend, the strength of your body, the quiet of a morning. What others pass by as ordinary, you receive as extraordinary. This daily thankfulness transforms even small moments into sources of joy, for you no longer demand more before you feel content. You see clearly that what you already hold is precious. There is also wisdom in learning to lower attachment to outcomes by remembering their fragility. A goal achieved can be taken away. A plan fulfilled can be undone. By reflecting on these possibilities, you free yourself from the illusion that lasting happiness lies in external success. You are reminded to root joy, not in possessions or achievements, but in the inner strength that cannot be taken. This perspective returns you to the Stoic truth. Happiness belongs to the quality of your thoughts and actions, not to the shape of your fortune. Some may say that dwelling on loss invites sadness, but the Stoics saw it differently. To forget loss is to be unprepared for it. To ignore impermanence is to live in delusion. Negative visualization is not despair, it is training. It is the sharpening of the mind so that gratitude deepens, attachments soften, and resilience grows. By facing loss in thought, you are less broken when it comes in reality. You meet it not as a thief, but as an expected guest. This practice must be woven into daily life with care. In the morning, you might remind yourself that the day is not promised, that the people you meet may not return, that health and fortune are not guaranteed. This awareness shapes the way you carry yourself, more present, more deliberate, more grateful. At night, you may reflect on the blessings that remain throughout the day, seeing them as gifts rather than entitlements. In time, this rhythm reshapes the entire mindset, grounding you in appreciation rather than complaint. The power of negative visualization lies in how it transforms both joy and pain. Joy becomes richer because it is recognized as fragile. Pain becomes lighter because it is no longer met with shock. Life's highs are savored, life's lows are endured, and through both, the soul remains steady. This steadiness is the heart of Stoic happiness, a joy that does not deny life's harshness, but thrives within it. When you reflect on loss, you are not inviting sorrow, you are training for resilience. You are reminding yourself that you do not own tomorrow, that you do not command fortune, that you are a guest in a world where everything shifts. This recognition is not bleak, it is liberating. For once you see that nothing is guaranteed, every moment becomes a gift. Every relationship becomes sacred. Every ordinary day becomes extraordinary. Thus, the practice of premeditatio malorum is not about fearing life, but about cherishing it more deeply. By confronting loss in thought, you protect joy in reality. By rehearsing hardship, you become grateful for ease. By acknowledging death, you honor life. The Stoics teach that this is the path to a happiness that does not float on illusion, but rests on wisdom. A happiness that knows loss is part of life and still chooses gratitude. A happiness that cannot be shaken because it is built on truth. By training the mind through negative visualization, you learn to treat each day as fragile, each bond as sacred, and each breath as something borrowed rather than owned. This practice teaches gratitude and resilience, yet it does not end with acceptance of loss. There is a further step, a deeper discipline, where you are not only prepared for hardship, but willing to embrace it as necessary. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate. It is not merely about enduring what happens, but about welcoming it as part of the order of life, as something meant to shape you rather than destroy you. This approach begins with a simple truth. Life is not designed to serve your preferences. Seasons turn without asking, storms arrive uninvited, and fortune shifts without explanation. To resist this flow is to exhaust yourself against what cannot be altered. Amore teaches the opposite, to see in every event, even the painful ones, a role in the larger pattern of existence. Instead of saying, "Why me?" the Stoic says, "Yes, this too belongs." To love fate is not to deny pain or pretend suffering feels sweet. It is to acknowledge that hardship is as much a part of life as joy, and both serve their purpose. A fire does not only warm, it also burns. Yet both qualities belong to its nature. Rain nourishes but also floods, yet both are essential to the cycle of growth. In the same way, events that wound you also shape you. To wish them away is to wish away your own growth. The practice of amor fati turns adversity into material for strength. When loss strikes, you no longer see it as senseless cruelty, but as an opportunity to deepen wisdom and patience. When betrayal wounds you, it becomes a chance to practice forgiveness and clarity. When illness arrives, it becomes a reminder of mortality and a lesson in endurance. Each event, pleasant or harsh, is part of the raw material with which character is forged. The Stoics taught that the universe is not your servant but your teacher, and amorati is the discipline of learning every lesson it offers. This way of living transforms your relationship with expectation. Instead of hoping only for smooth roads, you learn to welcome rough terrain as part of the journey. You stop demanding that life unfold according to your script, and instead adapt yourself to the unfolding script of life. This flexibility is strength, for it means nothing can surprise you into despair. You greet fortune with gratitude and misfortune with resolve, knowing both are pieces of the same design. Amorati also frees you from the bitterness of comparison. Many people waste their lives asking why others have easier paths, why some enjoy wealth while others struggle, why health blesses one and not another. But the Stoic response is that comparison blinds you to your own task. Your fate is yours alone, not to be measured against another's. To love fate is to stop wishing for a different story, and instead, to live your own with dignity. The discipline also sharpens presence. When you stop resisting the flow of life, you can finally live in it fully. The present moment is not judged as good or bad, but as necessary. Every experience, every encounter, every challenge becomes part of the fabric of existence. By welcoming events as they come, you free yourself from regret about the past and fear of the future. You no longer waste energy wishing things were different, but use your strength to meet them as they are. This acceptance does not make you passive. Amorati does not mean you stop acting or striving. It means you act with full devotion while accepting whatever follows. You work diligently, but you do not curse fate if your effort does not bring reward. You love sincerely, but you do not collapse if love is not returned. You pursue justice, but you do not despair if injustice prevails for a time. Your commitment is to the integrity of action, not the guarantee of outcome. This is not resignation, it is freedom. To embrace fate is also to live with greater peace. Much suffering comes not from the events themselves, but from the insistence that they should be otherwise. Pain, doubled by resistance, becomes torment. But when you see hardship as part of nature's order, the sting softens. You accept it as you accept winter or night. Unpleasant, perhaps, but necessary and never permanent. By aligning your heart with reality, you dissolve much of the inner conflict that comes from fighting against what already is. Amore fati cultivates humility. To love fate is to admit that you are not the master of the universe. You are a part of it, bound by its laws, carried by its rhythm. This humility does not degrade you, but connects you to something larger. You begin to see yourself not as a solitary figure battling against life, but as a participant in the vast unfolding of nature. Each event, whether joyful or painful, reminds you of your place in this greater whole. This practice also deepens gratitude in a unique way. It teaches you not only to cherish blessings while they last, but also to cherish the trials that force growth. You thank life not only for comfort, but for difficulty, because both shape your character. To love fate is to see that even what wounds you serves you in ways that ease never could. Gratitude expands beyond convenience into reverence for existence itself. The strength of amorati lies in its ability to transform suffering into meaning. Suffering without context breeds despair, but suffering, seen as part of a greater design, becomes bearable. You may not understand the reason for every event, but you can trust that it belongs to the order of life. This trust gives you courage to face trials without bitterness. You do not need the world to align with your desires to find peace, because you have chosen to align your desires with the world. Living with amorati also nurtures resilience. Life will not spare you hardship, But hardship loses much of its power when you no longer meet it with resistance. You bend without breaking. You adapt without collapsing. You endure without despairing. Every trial becomes proof of your capacity. Every setback becomes material for strength. This resilience is not coldness but maturity, the recognition that life is both harsh and beautiful, and that both qualities belong together. The paradox of this practice is that by loving fate, you discover a deeper form of freedom. The world may bring events beyond your control, but it cannot control how you receive them. When you greet each moment as necessary, nothing can rob you of peace. You live without constant fear, without endless complaint, without the exhausting need to rearrange life to suit your preference. You become steady, not because the world is gentle, but because your heart is aligned with its rhythm. In the end, Amorati is not simply about acceptance. It is about affirmation. It is the choice to say, not only, I will endure this, but I welcome this as part of life's design. To live this way is to dissolve the boundary between fortune and misfortune, to see both as different expressions of the same order. It is to step into each day with open hands, ready to receive whatever comes, knowing that all of it belongs. Thus, the journey of Stoic happiness moves further from controlling the self to releasing externals, to practicing virtue, to caring for process over result, to preparing for loss, and now to loving fate itself. At each stage, the soul becomes lighter, stronger, and freer. In Amor Fati, you reach a point where nothing in life is wasted. For everything that arrives, whether sweet or bitter, becomes material for wisdom and strength. To live this way is to live fully, not in defiance of fate, but in harmony with it. And in that harmony lies a joy that cannot be shaken. By learning to love fate, you stop resisting life and begin to walk with it. Every event, even hardship, becomes part of a larger order that strengthens rather than weakens you. But to truly live with such acceptance, there is another practice the Stoics urged us to master, the discipline of presence. For even if you embrace fate, the mind often drifts backward into regret, forward into worry, and in doing so, it loses the only place where life actually happens, the present moment. To live well, you must learn to anchor yourself here where thought, choice, and action exist in their fullness. The difficulty is that the human mind rarely rests. It replays the past with endless what-ifs, trying to undo what is already sealed. Or it rushes into the future, spinning countless scenarios that may never arrive. Both rob you of peace, for the past cannot be altered, and the future cannot be controlled. What remains, and what is always within your grasp, is this moment. Presence is the gate through which clarity, gratitude, and strength enter. To practice present awareness is not to erase memory or deny planning. It is to recognize their limits. Memory teaches, but it is not a place to live. Planning prepares, but it is not a place to dwell. Presence is where the lessons of the past and the possibilities of the future converge into action. When you root yourself in now, you are free to act with your full strength instead of scattering your mind across time. The Stoics saw distraction as one of the greatest thieves of life. People waste years regretting old choices or fearing future losses, while neglecting the opportunities unfolding before them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you must confine yourself to the present, for that is where power lies. Every thought, every decision, every breath happens here, not elsewhere. To miss the present is to miss life itself. Anchoring in the present brings clarity. When you let go of what has already passed and what has not yet come, you see more clearly what lies before you. Small details emerge, the sound of a voice, the weight of your words, the choices available in this instant. This clarity allows you to respond with wisdom instead of reacting from habit or fear. You no longer carry the burden of yesterday or the anxiety of tomorrow. You meet today as it is. Presence also deepens gratitude. When you are here fully, you notice what often goes unseen. The warmth of light, the rhythm of your breath, the presence of those near you. You stop overlooking simple joys because you are not rushing past them in thought. Gratitude is not something to be postponed until circumstances improve. It is available whenever you choose to notice the richness of now. The practice of presence also strengthens resilience. Pain feels heavier when the mind drags yesterday's wounds into today or piles tomorrow's fears on top of today's trials. But when you focus only on the moment, hardship is reduced to its true size. A challenge you can face step by step. The future may hold more difficulty, but it is not yet here. The past may hold scars, but they are not today's weight. Present allows you to carry only what belongs to this hour, and that load is always bearable. Living in the present also transforms relationships. Too often, conversations are clouded by distraction. The body is present, but the mind is elsewhere. When you give your full attention to another person, without rehearsing past conflicts or anticipating future responses, you honor them. You listen more deeply, speak more thoughtfully, and connect more genuinely. Presence is one of the greatest gifts you can offer because it says this moment with you is enough. Another strength of presence is how it frees you from perfectionism. Many people waste time replaying past mistakes or fearing future judgment, trapped in a cycle of self-criticism. But when you anchor yourself in now, you understand that life is not about flawless records or perfect outcomes. It is about living this moment with integrity. The past mistake does not own you. The future opinion does not define you. Only the present choice matters. The discipline of presence also guards against restlessness. When the mind constantly flees into past or future, it never feels at home. It is always chasing or fleeing, never settled. But when you root yourself in the present, you find a steadiness that no external event can shake. The world may remain chaotic, but within you are calm because you are not stretched thin across time. You are fully here, and that is enough. This practice does not come easily, for distraction is deeply ingrained. The mind resists stillness, preferring the familiar loops of memory and anticipation. Presence must be trained, just as discipline or courage must be trained. Simple practices help, noticing the rhythm of your breath, pausing before responding, returning your attention to the task at hand. Each time you bring your mind back, you strengthen its ability to stay. Over time, presence becomes more natural, and life itself feels more vivid. Anchoring in the moment also transforms how you view time. Instead of treating life as something that begins later, you recognize that life is always happening now. Happiness is not postponed until circumstances align. Meaning is not delayed until the future arrives. Both are available in this instant, through the quality of your thoughts and actions. This understanding frees you from the illusion that joy lies somewhere ahead. It is here, waiting for your attention. When presence becomes your practice, regret loses much of its sting. The past may contain mistakes, but they do not rule today. You acknowledge them, learn from them, and then return to the present where change is possible. Similarly, anxiety about the future loses its grip. The future will come as it will, shaped partly by your actions, but never fully by your control. By focusing on today, you prepare wisely without being consumed by worry. This mindset also sharpens virtue. Courage, wisdom, justice, and self-discipline can only be lived now. You cannot be courageous yesterday or disciplined tomorrow. You can only act with these qualities in this moment. Presence, therefore, is not just a comfort. It is the ground where virtue is practiced. Without it, virtue remains abstract. With it, virtue becomes real, lived in the choices of today. The power of present awareness lies in its simplicity. Life reduces to what you can do now, how you will think, how you will speak, how you will act. Nothing more is required, and nothing more is possible. This focus strips away the weight of what cannot be changed or predicted and leaves you with the clarity of action. In this clarity, peace arises because you are no longer at war with time. To practice presence is to reclaim your life. Each moment fully lived becomes a small eternity, rich with meaning. Days no longer slip past unnoticed, lost to distraction. Instead, life becomes a collection of moments fully experienced, fully honored. This is how the Stoics taught us to live, not in the shadows of yesterday or the mirages of tomorrow, but in the luminous reality of now. And so, from loving fate as part of life's order, you move naturally into the practice of presence, where fate is not only accepted, but experienced deeply in each breath, each word, each action. For happiness is never hidden in a distant past or uncertain future. It is always waiting, here in the present moment, where life truly begins. By anchoring yourself in the present, you learn to live where life truly happens, here and now, free from the weight of regret and the pull of anxiety. Yet the present does not always come wrapped in ease. Often, it arrives with challenges, with obstacles that threaten to shake your peace and test your patience. The Stoics understood that difficulty is not an interruption to life, but part of its design. To live well is not to escape adversity, but to transform it. This is why they urged us to see hardship not as punishment, but as training, a field in which strength, wisdom, and character are forged. Adversity is often judged as something unfair, an enemy that steals happiness and blocks the path to peace. But this perspective blinds you to its deeper role. Every obstacle carries within it the seed of growth. Without resistance, muscles weaken. Without tests, wisdom fades. Without trials, courage remains unproven. Life does not spare anyone from pain, but it offers in every difficulty a chance to build something within yourself that comfort never could. When hardship arrives, the first instinct is often rejection. Why this? Why now? But the Stoic way is to ask a different question. What can this teach me? How can I grow from this? The change of question shifts the entire experience. Instead of being crushed by the weight of adversity, you begin to treat it as a teacher. Pain still hurts, but it no longer feels empty. Struggle still exhausts, but it carries meaning. You are no longer a victim of events, but a student of them. Resilience is the first lesson hardship offers. Life's blows cannot always be avoided, but they can be endured. When you face adversity with steadiness, you train your mind to withstand future trials with greater calm. The first difficulty may shake you deeply, but each time you stand again, the spirit grows less fragile. Like metal tempered by fire, you become stronger, precisely because you have faced heat. Without such tests, resilience remains unformed, and life's next storm finds you unprepared. Wisdom is another gift hidden in obstacles. Comfort tends to dull perception, while hardship sharpens it. When things go well, it is easy to drift into complacency, assuming life will always flow smoothly. But adversity awakens awareness. It forces you to see what truly matters, what is within your control and what is not. It strips away illusions and reminds you of life's brevity and fragility. Every challenge becomes a mirror reflecting both your weaknesses and your strengths. If you look carefully, you discover lessons that no book or lecture could teach. Adversity also cultivates humility. Success can easily inflate the ego, convincing you that you are the master of fortune. But hardship reminds you of your limits. It shows you that control is narrower than you believed, that the world does not bend to your will. This recognition, while humbling, also grounds you in truth. Humility clears space for gratitude, for empathy, and for a deeper respect for the struggles of others. When you suffer, you learn to see suffering everywhere, and compassion grows naturally from this vision. Another value in reframing adversity is how it strengthens courage. Fear often thrives in anticipation of pain, but when you have faced hardship before and endured it, fear loses some of its grip. You realize that much of what you dreaded was survivable, even bearable. Each obstacle faced becomes a proof to yourself that you are stronger than you believed. Courage is not a gift granted in ease. It is a discipline forged in trial. Justice, too, finds fertile ground in adversity. When you are tested, you see more clearly the importance of fairness and integrity. Adversity tempts you to cut corners, to act selfishly, to abandon principles for ease. But when you choose justice, even in difficulty, you affirm your character in a way comfort never requires. Adversity gives you the chance to live by values rather than words, to prove that justice is not conditional, but constant. The Stoics often compared adversity to a training ground or a sparring partner. Just as an athlete grows stronger by facing resistance, so too does the soul grow through obstacles. A fighter who never trains against an opponent never develops skill. A person who never meets hardship never develops depth. Life provides these opponents in the form of illness, failure, rejection, or loss. Each one, unwelcome though it may feel, is an invitation to practice strength of mind. It is important to see that reframing adversity does not mean seeking it. The Stoics did not glorify suffering for its own sake. Rather, they taught that since hardship is inevitable, the wise person chooses to meet it with purpose. You need not love pain, but you can love what pain builds within you. To complain about hardship is to fight what is already here. To use it as training is to turn what seemed harmful into something useful. This shift in perspective also transforms how you view success. Without adversity, success often feels shallow, for it has not been tested. But when you achieve something despite obstacles, the victory carries a deeper weight. The path was not smooth, yet you walked it. The goal was not easy, yet you pursued it. Adversity adds meaning to achievement, for it proves that your growth was not bought cheaply, but earned through trial. Even failure within adversity becomes meaningful when reframed. To stumble, to fall, to miss the mark. These are painful, but they are also part of training. Failure shows you where your limits are, and by seeing them clearly, you can expand them. Each mistake becomes a lesson that refines your judgment and deepens your wisdom. In this way, failure is no longer an end, but a step in the process of growth. Adversity also invites gratitude in unexpected ways. It sharpens your awareness of what remains when something is lost. When health fails, you appreciate more deeply the moments when you can still move freely. When comfort is stripped away, you recognize the value of even small reliefs. Gratitude born in hardship is stronger than the gratitude born in ease, for it does not depend on abundance, but on the recognition of life's fragile gifts. Reframing adversity as training also builds independence of mind. When you stop seeing hardship as unfair, you stop needing life to protect you from difficulty. You become less fragile, less dependent on favorable circumstances, more able to stand on your own. This independence is not coldness, but stability, the ability to face whatever comes without being broken by it. You do not wait for life to be easy, to live well. You live well even when life is hard. The most profound change comes when you begin to see obstacles not only as unavoidable, but as essential. Without them, courage would remain untested, wisdom shallow, justice unproven, and discipline weak. Hardship, then, is not a detour from the path of happiness, but part of the path itself. To reframe adversity as training is to understand that difficulty is not in the way of growth, it is the way. And so the practice continues, from presence, where you meet life as it unfolds, to adversity, where you treat each challenge as material for the soul's training. In this way, life's hardships become less frightening, less bitter, less senseless. They become the weights with which you strengthen the spirit, the lessons through which wisdom deepens, the trials that prove the substance of your character. To live this way is to transform life's harshness into your own strength, and in that strength lies a form of happiness that cannot be taken. When you learn to reframe adversity as training, you stop treating hardship as an enemy and begin to see it as a partner in growth. Obstacles become the weights that build strength, and challenges become the teachers that sharpen wisdom. Yet, even as you grow resilient through trials, there remains another force that can quietly weaken the soul if left unchecked: the pull of desire. While adversity tests you from the outside, unchecked desires erode you from within. To live with steadiness, the Stoics taught that you must practice moderation, keeping your needs simple and your pleasures under control. For it is not pain alone that enslaves people, but also the endless chase of indulgence. The problem with desire is not that pleasure exists, but that it multiplies endlessly when allowed to rule unchecked. One taste calls for another. One possession stirs hunger for more. One comfort makes the next discomfort unbearable. What begins as a want quickly becomes dependence, and dependence is a form of slavery. A person ruled by desire may appear free, but their peace is chained to external conditions. Moderation cuts these chains by teaching the mind to be content with less, to value what is natural and necessary rather than what is excessive. The Stoics drew a clear line between needs and wants. Needs are simple: food, shelter, rest, companionship, health of body and mind. Wants are layered endlessly upon these basics. Fine dining instead of nourishment, luxury instead of shelter, status instead of friendship, indulgence instead of care. Needs can be satisfied, wants never truly can. Moderation teaches you to return to simplicity where satisfaction is possible and peace becomes natural. This practice does not call for rejecting all pleasure. Pleasure has its place, but it must not occupy the throne. When enjoyed in moderation, pleasure is sweet. When pursued as life's goal, it becomes poison. For pleasure fades, and when happiness depends on its presence, happiness fades with it. The Stoic path is to enjoy without clinging, to taste without depending, to let pleasure visit but never command. Living with moderation also strengthens freedom. The person who requires little is less vulnerable to loss, less shaken by scarcity, less controlled by others. When your happiness does not depend on luxuries, you cannot be easily bribed, manipulated, or broken. A simple meal satisfies, a plain bed provides rest, and any circumstance becomes livable. By reducing dependence on pleasures, you become stronger, not weaker, for you no longer need the world to constantly feed your desires. Moderation also nurtures gratitude. When you expect little, everything feels like a gift. A drink of water, a piece of bread, a kind word, all become treasures when you do not demand constant indulgence. Gratitude thrives when life is simple, for then even small blessings shine brightly. But when you train yourself to crave excess, even abundance feels insufficient. Moderation turns life into a feast. Indulgence turns it into a hunger that never ends. This way of life also sharpens discipline. Every time you restrain a desire, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your appetites. Each small victory over impulse builds confidence and steadiness. Discipline grows not in grand moments, but in daily choices. Resisting excess, pausing before indulgence, choosing enough instead of more. These small acts repeated form a character that is resilient and free. Moderation also protects against disappointment. When you expect much, you are often let down. When you require little, life more easily meets your needs. By keeping desires modest, you reduce the gap between expectation and reality. Happiness becomes more stable, for it no longer depends on rare or extravagant conditions, but on what is simple and always near. There is wisdom in remembering that the body itself requires little. Hunger is satisfied with plain food, thirst with water, fatigue with rest. It is the mind that complicates needs into endless cravings. To live simply is to align your life more closely with nature, which demands little to sustain you. Complexity may decorate life, but simplicity sustains it. Moderation also deepens relationships. When you are not consumed by chasing pleasures, you can give more of yourself to others. Friendship is no longer a tool for gain, but a bond of mutual respect. Love is no longer tangled with possession, but grounded in genuine care. The less you demand from life, the more you can give. And in giving, you often receive what desire could never secure. The practice of moderation is not about denial, but about balance. You need not reject comfort or pleasure, but you must remain their master. When luxury comes, accept it with gratitude, but without dependence. When it leaves, let it go without despair. This balance allows you to move through fortune's changes with steadiness, neither intoxicated by abundance nor broken by scarcity. Moderation also guards against arrogance. Abundance often deceives people into thinking they are superior, that wealth or status makes them greater than others. But when you live with simple needs, you see clearly that human worth lies not in possessions, but in character. Moderation keeps pride in check, reminding you that life's essentials are shared by all. Another strength of moderation is how it makes you more adaptable. When you are used to simple living, you can adjust to any circumstance without losing peace. A soft bed is pleasant, but a hard floor does not destroy you. A fine meal delights, but plain food nourishes just as well. This adaptability makes you resilient in times of change, for your happiness is not fragile. Moderation also creates space for higher pursuits. When you are not consumed by desire, your mind is free to seek wisdom, to practice justice, to act with courage. Excess distracts. Simplicity clarifies the energy. One spent chasing pleasures can be directed toward building character and serving others. This shift transforms life from a cycle of craving into a path of growth. The Stoics often pointed out that wealth and luxury do not guarantee peace. History is full of rulers with power and riches who lived in torment, consumed by fear of loss and hunger for more. By contrast, those who lived simply often enjoyed deeper peace, for they were satisfied with what life freely offered. Moderation is therefore not a deprivation, but a liberation from the false belief that happiness lies in excess. To practice moderation, you must begin with awareness. Notice which pleasures have become needs, which indulgences have turned into dependencies. Then, step by step, loosen their hold. Skip a luxury. Reduce an indulgence. Practice satisfaction with less. Each act of restraint strengthens your freedom. Over time, you discover that you do not need as much as you once believed, and in that discovery lies peace. Ultimately, moderation in desires is not about living a life of bleak austerity. It is about choosing a life where joy is not chained to excess. It is about finding contentment in what is natural, appreciating what is simple, and valuing what is always within reach. To live this way is to free yourself from the endless chase, to walk lightly through life, and to discover that happiness was never in abundance, but in the ability to be satisfied with enough. And so, the Stoic path unfolds further. After training through adversity, you learn to master the subtler battle within the pull of desire. By reducing dependence on pleasures and grounding yourself in simplicity, you become free from the chains of craving. In this freedom lies a steady joy, a joy that cannot be stolen by loss or destroyed by scarcity. For it rests not on what you consume, but on who you are. By keeping your desires in balance, you free yourself from the restless cycle of craving, learning to live with less and to find contentment in simplicity. This moderation makes you stronger, for you are no longer a slave to pleasures, nor easily broken by their absence. Yet, even when the pull of desire is tempered, another storm threatens the mind. The surge of passions, anger, fear, envy, jealousy, despair. These emotions often appear like forces too powerful to resist, sweeping people into actions they later regret. The Stoics taught that these passions are not uncontrollable tempests of nature, but judgments of the mind, choices of interpretation, beliefs dressed in the language of feelings. To control them is to reclaim authority over yourself. Passions often disguise themselves as external invasions, as if anger or fear suddenly attacks without warning. But the truth is subtler. They arise from how you interpret events. Someone insults you. Anger follows because you judge the insult as an injury to your worth. A danger looms. Fear arises because you judge it unbearable. Another succeeds. Envy appears because you judge their gain as your loss. Each passion depends not on the event itself, but on the judgment you attach to it. If the judgment changes, the passion fades. Anger is a prime example. People believe it erupts like fire, but it is sparked by choice, however quick, to see an offense as intolerable. To control anger, you must learn to pause before granting it this judgment. The insult is only words, unless you decide to let it cut. The delay between event and reaction is where freedom lives. By questioning whether the anger serves reason or only pride, you create space to respond with clarity instead of heat. Anger feels powerful, but it often weakens you, clouding judgment and leading to regret. Restraint, by contrast, preserves strength, for it allows you to act with intention. Fear, too, arises from judgment. It is the belief that pain, loss, or death are unbearable evils. But the Stoics reminded us that these things, though difficult, are not true evils. What is evil is the surrender of integrity, the abandonment of virtue. Pain tests endurance, but it does not destroy character. Death ends life, but it does not end dignity. To reframe fear is to see that much of what you dread cannot touch your inner self. Fear loses power when you remind yourself that it is not the event itself, but your belief about it that frightens you. Courage grows naturally when you shift judgment from "this is unbearable" to "this too can be faced." Envy is another passion that corrodes peace. It springs from the belief that another's gain is your loss. That fortune is a limited field in which others' success diminishes your own. But this judgment is false. The virtue of another does not steal yours. Their wealth does not erase your integrity. Their recognition does not define your worth. To dissolve envy, you must correct the judgment. Happiness is not measured by comparison, but by alignment with your own principles. When you see clearly that joy does not depend on surpassing others, but on governing yourself, envy fades into indifference. Control of passions does not mean erasing all emotion. The Stoics distinguish between natural feelings and destructive passions. To feel pain at loss, to startle at danger, to admire what is noble. These are natural responses. Passions arise when the mind amplifies them into distorted judgments. Grief turned into despair, caution into paralyzing fear, appreciation into envy. The task is not to suppress humanity, but to train it to guide raw impulses with reason, so they do not overthrow the soul. This training begins with awareness. Most people are carried by emotions without noticing the judgments beneath them. To pause and examine what you are telling yourself when anger or fear arises is the first step to mastery. Ask what belief is feeding this passion. Is it true? Is it useful? This act of questioning interrupts the automatic surge and returns authority to reason. Awareness does not silence passions instantly, but it weakens their grip each time it is practiced. Control of passions also requires practice in daily life, not only in great crisis. Each small irritation is a chance to test restraint. Each small fear, an opportunity to test courage. Each small envy, a reminder to correct judgment. By training in the small, you prepare for the great. The soldier who drills daily is ready for battle. The mind that practices restraint daily is ready for storms. Mastery is not a single act, but a discipline built through repetition. The Stoics also taught the value of perspective. Many passions grow because the mind narrows its focus until the event feels overwhelming. By widening perspective, you reduce their intensity. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow, in a year, at the end of life? Often, anger, fear, and envy shrink when measured against the vastness of time. Perspective restores proportion, reminding you that most disturbances are small and unworthy of consuming your peace. Another tool is to remember the humanity of others. Anger often thrives on the judgment that others act with malice, but many errors come from ignorance, weakness, or their own struggles. By seeing others as fellow humans prone to mistakes, you soften judgment and replace wrath with patience. This does not excuse injustice, but prevents you from burning yourself with the fire of resentment. To hold bitterness is to wound yourself more deeply than the original offense. The reward of controlling passions is profound freedom. You no longer live as a slave to every surge of feeling, reacting blindly and regretting later. Instead, you act with intention, guided by reason and principle. You feel emotions, but are not mastered by them. You acknowledge impulses, but do not let them dictate your path. This steadiness is not coldness, but strength, the ability to remain yourself in all conditions. Mastery of passions also deepens relationships. Without control, anger destroys trust. Envy poisons friendship. Fear stifles honesty. With control, you bring patience, fairness, and calm into every bond. You become someone others can rely on, not because you are emotionless, but because you are steady. This steadiness nurtures respect, for people sense that your reactions are measured, not reckless. The discipline also preserves peace of mind. A person ruled by passions is tossed endlessly between highs and lows, their inner world dictated by circumstance. But one who governs passions enjoys a calmer current. Life still brings joy and pain, but the soul remains anchored, not dragged by every wave. This inner calm is one of the highest forms of happiness, for it is not dependent on fortune, but on mastery of self. The Stoics did not promise perfection, for passions are deeply rooted in human nature, but they urged constant progress. Even if you cannot silence anger, you can shorten its reign. Even if you cannot erase fear, you can shrink its hold. Even if envy arises, you can dissolve it quickly with reason. Progress, not perfection, is the goal, and each step toward mastery builds freedom. To control passions is to recognize that happiness lies not in eliminating emotion, but in aligning it with wisdom. Anger restrained becomes justice. Fear transformed becomes caution. Desire moderated becomes appreciation. When guided by reason, emotions serve rather than enslave. The difference is judgment, the lens through which you interpret events. Change the judgment, and you change the passion. Thus the journey continues. From moderation in desire, where you tame the pull of pleasure, to mastery over passions, where you reclaim authority over the storms within. In this discipline lies one of the greatest freedoms a human can achieve, the freedom to remain steady in a world of constant provocation, to govern yourself when all else is beyond control. And in this steadiness, joy takes root, not fragile or fleeting, but firm and enduring. By learning to control the passions, you reclaim the freedom that anger, fear, and envy once stole. You become steady, no longer dragged by every surge of emotion, but guided by reason and principle. Yet mastery of passions is not the end of the work. The Stoics knew that growth requires constant vigilance, for no matter how disciplined one becomes, the mind drifts and errors slip in unnoticed. To remain strong, you must turn your gaze inward each day, not with cruelty, but with honesty. This is where the practice of daily reflection enters. The evening review that examines how you lived, where you upheld virtue, and where you fell short. Reflection is not meant to punish the self, but to illuminate it. Just as a craftsman inspects his work at the end of the day, so too must the soul examine the shape of its actions. Without reflection, mistakes repeat without correction, and progress stalls. But with reflection, even failures serve as lessons, sharpening clarity for tomorrow. The Stoics understood that a life unexamined drifts into disorder, but a life reviewed daily grows in strength and integrity. The evening review begins with memory. You look back over the day, not rushing, not excusing, but seeing it clearly. Where were you tested? How did you respond? Did courage guide you or did fear? Did justice shape your actions or did selfishness intrude? Did you practice moderation or did desire command? Did you keep presence or did distractions steal the hours? Each question becomes a mirror, reflecting not what you hoped, but what you lived. The practice also calls for balance. Reflection must not turn into self-condemnation, for excessive blame weakens rather than strengthens. Nor should it dissolve into self-praise, for pride blinds as much as neglect. The Stoics advised a measured honesty. Acknowledge what was good with gratitude, admit what was weak with humility, and resolve to do better. This balance ensures that reflection builds growth rather than despair. Daily review also strengthens awareness of patterns. A single failure may seem small, but repeated failures reveal habits that need correction. Reflection exposes these hidden patterns: anger that flares at the same triggers, fear that rises in similar situations, desires that return again and again. By recognizing patterns, you can prepare for them, training the mind to meet them differently tomorrow. Each evening becomes a strategy for improvement, turning weakness into a path for discipline. The practice is also deeply connected to gratitude. As you review the day, you notice not only failures, but also blessings. The conversation handled with patience, the temptation resisted, the kindness given. All are victories worth acknowledging. Gratitude for these moments strengthens resolve, for it reminds you that virtue is possible, that progress is real. Reflection is not only about correction, but about encouragement, a reminder that the path, though difficult, is being walked. Evening review also trains humility. To admit faults daily is to strip away arrogance. You see yourself as you are, not as you wish to appear. This humility protects against pride and keeps the soul grounded in reality. At the same time, it fosters compassion for others, for when you see your own failings clearly, you become less harsh in judging theirs. The discipline of self-examination turns judgment inward and patience outward. The Stoics believed that reflection at night prepared the mind for rest. Unexamined worries often stir in the dark, keeping the mind restless. But when you review the day with honesty, you release its weight. You accept what was done, resolve to correct what you can, and let go of what is beyond control. The mind, having accounted for itself, finds peace and closure. Sleep becomes calmer, and the morning begins without the residue of regret. Reflection also strengthens intention for the next day. By seeing where you faltered, you set clearer aims for tomorrow. If anger ruled, you prepare to pause sooner. If distraction stole hours, you plan to focus more firmly. If fear silenced you, you commit to speaking with courage. Reflection transforms mistakes into preparation, ensuring that each day is not merely lived, but used as material for growth. The power of this practice lies in its consistency. A single review is useful, but daily review shapes character over time. Just as water smooths stone drop by drop, so too does reflection refine the soul, day by day. Progress may seem slow, but it is steady, and in time, the difference becomes unmistakable. The person who examines life daily grows wiser, calmer, and more virtuous than the one who drifts without awareness. This discipline also teaches responsibility. When you review your day, you stop blaming fortune or others for your failings. You see clearly that the choice was yours, that the judgment was yours, that the action was yours. This responsibility may sting at first, but it is liberating, for it reminds you that improvement is within your power. You are not trapped by fate in this regard. You can shape tomorrow by learning from today. Evening reflection also strengthens alignment with values. Life often pulls you in many directions, scattering your energy. Reflection re-enters you, reminding you of what truly matters. Each day becomes a chance to check whether you are living according to the principles you claim to hold. This alignment prevents drift and keeps you anchored in purpose, even amid distractions and demands. The Stoics saw this practice as part of the broader work of philosophy, not abstract theory, but a daily discipline. Philosophy for them was a way of living, and reflection ensured that life and philosophy remained united. To study wisdom without examining how you live is to store knowledge without using it. But when you review each day with philosophy as your guide, knowledge becomes action, and wisdom becomes character. There is also courage in reflection. It is not easy to face your own failings without flinching, to see the moments where fear won, where anger ruled, where desire commanded. Many avoid this because it is uncomfortable, but the Stoic path demands this courage, the courage to see truth within yourself. This courage is greater than facing external foes, for the inner foe is often the strongest. Reflection, practiced honestly, is an act of bravery. The benefits of reflection extend beyond the self. As you grow through this practice, you bring greater stability into your relationships. You learn to apologize more quickly, to forgive more easily, to act with more patience. You see how your choices affect others, and this awareness makes you more careful with words and actions. Reflection, through personal, radiates outward, improving the lives of those around you. Ultimately, daily reflection is a form of accountability. Each night, you stand before yourself and ask, did I live with courage, wisdom, justice, and discipline? Did I align my actions with my principles? Did I use this day well? This accountability ensures that life is not wasted in distraction or drift. Even if the answers reveal failure, The act of asking keeps you on the path. For the Stoics, progress was not perfection, but persistence, and reflection was the tool that ensured persistence. And so the journey continues. From mastering passions, where you guard the soul from being ruled by emotions, to daily reflection, where you hold yourself accountable and refine your character each evening. This practice ensures that philosophy does not remain a theory, but becomes a lived discipline. In reviewing each day, you prepare the next. And in this rhythm of reflection and renewal, happiness is built, not as a sudden gift, but as a steady construction of the soul. By ending each day with honest reflection, you sharpen awareness and prepare your mind for greater discipline tomorrow. You see your actions clearly, strengthen what is good, and correct what is weak. Yet even with this daily practice, the soul can still grow soft if it remains always in comfort. True resilience requires more than thought. It demands training through lived experience. This is where the Stoics taught the value of voluntary discomfort, not as punishment, but as preparation. To fast, to sleep simply, to endure cold or hardship by choice, is to remind yourself of how little you truly need, and to strengthen your spirit for the times when such trials are not chosen, but imposed. The purpose of voluntary discomfort is not to glorify suffering, but to loosen the grip of fear. When you taste hunger and survive it, hunger loses its terror. When you sleep on the ground and endure, luxury no longer feels necessary. When you step into cold and withstand it, you see that discomfort is not destruction. By training in hardship, you strip discomfort of its power to intimidate you. The mind, once convinced it cannot live without comfort, becomes pliant and strong when it learns otherwise. This practice also builds gratitude. When you occasionally deprive yourself of pleasures, you return to them with fresh appreciation. A simple meal feels rich after fasting. Warmth feels precious after cold. Rest feels sweet after labor. What was once taken for granted becomes a gift. Gratitude does not require abundance. It requires awareness. Voluntary discomfort sharpens this awareness, teaching you to see blessings more clearly by experiencing their absence. There is also strength in knowing that you can live with less. Much fear in life comes from the thought, I cannot survive without this. People cling to wealth, comfort, or status because they believe life would collapse without them. But when you practice living simply, you prove to yourself that these fears are illusions. You discover that the body needs little, and the mind can adapt. This discovery liberates you from dependence, making you less vulnerable to loss. The Stoics urge such practices because fortune is unpredictable. No one is guaranteed constant comfort. Illness, poverty, exile, or disaster may come without warning. By training with voluntary discomfort, you are not surprised when hardship arrives. You have rehearsed it, and in rehearsal, fear is lessened. This preparation does not prevent difficulty, but it prevents panic. You meet adversity as something familiar rather than foreign. This discipline also strengthens self-control. The choice to deny yourself food for a time, to endure cold, or to live simply when luxury is available, is proof that you command your desires. It is easy to speak of restraint in theory, harder to prove it in action. Voluntary discomfort makes philosophy real, turning words into practice. Each act of chosen hardship is a reminder that comfort does not rule you. You rule yourself. Moderation becomes easier when you practice discomfort. When you know you can endure hunger, you no longer need to indulge every craving. When you know you can rest on the ground, you no longer demand luxury to sleep. When you know you can endure cold, you no longer fear weather or circumstance. By lowering dependence on pleasure, voluntary discomfort strengthens freedom. This practice also guards against arrogance. Wealth and ease often deceive people into believing they are strong, when in truth, they are fragile. Luxury breeds softness, and softness breeds fear of loss. But when you strip away these comforts by choice, you remind yourself of your true condition, a human being who needs little to survive. This humility grounds you, preventing the pride that often comes with abundance. Voluntary discomfort also teaches clarity about value. By living simply for a time, You see which things are truly necessary and which are only distractions. You learn to distinguish between what the body requires and what the mind invents as desire. This clarity makes you more deliberate in how you live, spend, and act. You become less controlled by trends or social pressures, for you know from experience that life can be lived well without excess. Another strength of this practice is that it builds endurance of the mind as much as the body. When you fast, hunger rises not only as a physical sensation, but as a storm of thoughts. When you sleep simply, the body aches, but the mind also resists, longing for ease. By enduring these moments, you train the mind to remain steady under pressure. This mental endurance is more valuable than physical toughness, for it prepares you to face all forms of hardship with composure. The practice also aligns with nature. Human beings were not born into constant comfort. For much of history, survival required endurance of hunger, cold, and hardship. Modern life often shields us from these realities, but in doing so, it can weaken the spirit. Voluntary discomfort reconnects you with the truth that to be human is to endure. It brings you closer to the natural condition where strength is tested and resilience is built. Such training also deepens compassion. When you practice discomfort, you taste what others live with daily: hunger, poverty, exposure. This taste builds empathy, for you understand more directly the struggles of those less fortunate. Compassion grows, not from theory but from shared experience, however temporary. Voluntary discomfort, thus, not only strengthens you, but softens your heart toward others. Importantly, the Stoics did not see this practice as extreme asceticism. They did not urge constant deprivation, but occasional trials. The aim was not to reject comfort entirely, but to loosen its hold, to enjoy comfort without clinging, to endure hardship without fear. That balance was their goal. Voluntary discomfort is therefore not about punishing the body, but about liberating the mind. This discipline also teaches readiness. Life's trials rarely announce themselves. A sudden loss, a change of fortune, a challenge unexpected. These arrive without warning. By practicing hardship when you do not have to, you prepare for when you must. This readiness is a quiet strength, a confidence that no matter what comes, you have trained for it. You may not welcome hardship, but you are not broken by it. Ultimately, voluntary discomfort reminds you that happiness is not tied to ease. Comfort may decorate life, but it is not its foundation. Joy that depends on constant pleasure is fragile, easily broken by loss. But joy that endures through simplicity, through endurance, through resilience, that joy is unshakable. By practicing discomfort, you root happiness, not in what surrounds you, but in the strength within you. And so, the path continues, from daily reflection, where you examine your choices, to voluntary discomfort, where you test your strength in lived experience. Each practice reinforces the other. Reflection sharpens awareness. Discomfort strengthens resolve. Together they build a character that does not collapse in hardship and does not grow soft in ease. In this way, you become prepared for whatever life brings, carrying within you a happiness that no storm can take away. By choosing voluntary discomfort, you learn that comfort is not a requirement for peace, and that hardship, when practiced willingly, strengthens gratitude and resilience. You discover that the body needs little, and the mind becomes freer when it no longer clings to excess. Yet strength alone does not complete the Stoic path. A resilient spirit without compassion risks becoming hard, cold, and detached. The Stoics taught that true wisdom recognizes not only your own endurance, but also your bond with others. To live well is to see humanity as one family, to understand that every person shares the same spark of reason, and to act with justice and compassion in all dealings. The world often tempts us to divide between friend and stranger, ally and enemy, rich and poor, familiar and foreign. But these divisions are illusions. Beneath them, every person shares the same nature, the capacity for thought, for choice, for dignity. The Stoics insisted that reason is universal, flowing through each human being, no matter their circumstance. To deny this connection is to deny part of your own humanity. To embrace it is to live in harmony with the larger order of existence. Justice begins with this recognition. If all people share reason, then all deserve fairness. You cannot claim virtue for yourself while exploiting others, for injustice corrupts both the victim and the perpetrator. The Stoics believe that justice is not optional, but essential to a life aligned with nature. To act unjustly is to betray the very rational bond that makes us human. When you treat others with fairness, you affirm not only their worth, but your own integrity. Compassion flows naturally from this view. When you see others as part of the same family, their suffering ceases to be distant. Hunger, fear, and loss are not abstract when you recognize that you too are vulnerable to them. Compassion does not mean weakness. It means acknowledging shared humanity and responding with care. The Stoics did not preach cold detachment, but urged a balanced compassion. Help others where you can, but do so without becoming enslaved by what lies beyond your control. This perspective also dissolves envy and pride. Envy weakens when you realize that another's success does not diminish you, for you are part of the same whole. Pride weakens when you recognize that fortune, talent, or circumstance could have placed you in another's position. To see humanity as one family is to understand that luck, not superiority, often shapes differences. This humility fosters respect and gratitude rather than division. Living with this mindset also transforms conflict. When wronged, the instinct is to retaliate, to view the other as an enemy. But the Stoics urged a higher view. See the offender as misguided rather than monstrous, as a brother or sister who errs out of ignorance or weakness. This does not excuse harm, but it changes your response. Instead of hatred, you bring patience. Instead of vengeance, you act with clarity and justice. To treat another's wrong as a reason for cruelty is to abandon your own reason. Seeing humanity as one family also deepens responsibility. If we are all connected, then your actions ripple outward, touching more lives than you may realize. Each act of fairness strengthens the fabric of community. Each act of cruelty weakens it. You cannot claim to live virtuously while ignoring the harm your choices inflict on others. Responsibility to the whole does not mean you can save everyone, but it does mean you must act with awareness of your place in the larger human story. This recognition also builds resilience against anger. Many frustrations arise from expecting others to act differently, as though they should be perfect. But when you see them as fellow humans, prone to error as you are, patience replaces rage. You remember your own failings, your own ignorance, and extend the same tolerance you hope to receive. Anger divides, but compassion heals, and healing strengthens the whole. The Stoics also saw this unity of humanity as aligning with the order of the cosmos. Just as the hand exists not for itself but as part of the body, so each person exists not only for themselves but as part of the human whole. To act selfishly is to act against nature, as if a hand tried to live apart from the body. To act justly and compassionately is to live in harmony with the larger order, fulfilling your role in the grand design. This perspective enriches daily life. When you see others as kin, kindness becomes natural. The small acts, a respectful word, a patient response, a generous gesture, gain weight, for they affirm your bond with the human family. Even when others fail to return kindness, you remain steady, because your actions are grounded in principle, not in transaction. Compassion given freely strengthens your character, whether or not it is acknowledged. Seeing humanity as one family also reshapes how you view differences. Culture, language, wealth, and status may separate people outwardly, but inwardly, the same capacities for thought, love, and virtue remain. To reduce someone to their label is to blind yourself to their humanity. The Stoics urged you to look past surface differences to the shared rational soul beneath. This vision dissolves prejudice and opens the way for justice and peace. This discipline also nourishes inner peace. Hatred, envy, and resentment agitate the mind, while compassion calms it. When you release the need to divide and compete, you free yourself from constant comparison and hostility. To treat others as family is to lighten your own heart, for you carry fewer enemies within it. Peace toward others becomes peace within yourself. Such a perspective requires practice. The world will test your patience with cruelty, ignorance, and injustice. It is easy to forget the bond of humanity when you are hurt or provoked, but each test is an opportunity to reaffirm the Stoic principle. Respond not with bitterness, but with justice, not with contempt, but with compassion. You may not change others immediately, but you preserve your own integrity, which is never wasted. Ultimately, to see humanity as one family is to live with both strength and tenderness. Strength, because you act justly, regardless of how others behave. Tenderness, because you recognize the shared vulnerability of all people. This balance creates a life that is both firm in principle and rich in connection. It ensures that happiness is not built on isolation or superiority, but on harmony with the greater whole. And so, the Stoic path widens from voluntary discomfort, which trains resilience in the self. You move outward to embrace the larger human family, where justice and compassion guide your actions. For strength without compassion hardens the heart, but compassion without strength lacks endurance. Together, they form the fullness of Stoic happiness. A life lived in harmony with both your own reason and the shared reason that unites us all. When you recognize humanity as one family, your heart softens toward others, and your actions are guided by justice and compassion. You treat each person as kin, bound together by reason and dignity. Yet even with this vision, another challenge lingers: the weight of judgment. People will praise you when it suits them, and blame you when it pleases them. To live by these shifting voices is to live as their servant, never free, always pulled by the winds of approval or rejection. The Stoics warned against this trap and taught the discipline of detaching from praise and blame, for neither adds nor subtracts from your virtue. The urge for praise runs deep, for it feels like confirmation that you are valued. Compliments can warm, recognition can motivate, applause can intoxicate, but dependence on them is dangerous, because praise is never steady. What pleases today may offend tomorrow, and the same action admired by one may be mocked by another. If your peace depends on being approved, then your peace belongs not to you, but to others. True freedom begins when you act not for applause, but for principle. Blame carries its own burden. Criticism wounds when you believe it defines your worth. Many crumble under harsh words, altering their choices to avoid disapproval. But blame, like praise, is rooted in perspective. One person condemns what another celebrates. One crowd mocks what another honors. To let blame rule you is to allow strangers to dictate your character. Virtue is not altered by insult, nor destroyed by accusation. It remains intact, untouched, unless you abandon it yourself. The Stoics reminded us that judgments from others are opinions, not truths. They reflect the beliefs, desires, and biases of those who speak them, not the essence of who you are. Marcus Aurelius urged himself to remember that the opinion of others cannot harm the soul unless the soul chooses to believe it. What matters is not the sound of their voices, but the soundness of your judgment. To detach from praise and blame is not to reject feedback entirely. It is wise to listen when others point out faults, for truth can come even from an enemy. But you must weigh the judgment carefully, keeping reason as the measure. If the criticism reveals error, correct it. If it is baseless, release it. What you must never do is let praise inflate you or blame diminish you, for both are fleeting and beyond your control. Living this way requires inner strength. The desire for recognition is deeply tied to pride, and the fear of blame is tied to insecurity. Detachment is built by remembering that worth lies in virtue alone. Courage, justice, wisdom, and discipline are not given by others' approval, nor taken by their scorn. They are lived in your choices, independent of applause. When this truth is fixed in your mind, you walk steadily, whether surrounded by cheers or by silence. This practice also brings peace to relationships. When you are not desperate for praise, you can act with honesty rather than flattery. When you are not afraid of blame, you can act with justice rather than compromise. Your words and deeds become clearer, for they are guided by principle, not manipulation. Others may respect you, or they may not, but you respect yourself, and that respect is unshakable. Detachment also strengthens courage. Fear of blame often silences people from doing what is right. Desire for praise often tempts them into doing what is popular. But when you free yourself from both, you can act boldly in alignment with your values. You no longer bend to please or cower to avoid criticism. This courage is not arrogance, but clarity. The freedom to do what reason dictates without waiting for approval. Another gift of this discipline is humility. When you detach from praise, you remind yourself that compliments do not prove superiority, for they are only reflections of another's opinion. When you detach from blame, you remind yourself that insults do not prove inferiority. You stand humbly in the middle, anchored not in vanity or shame, but in steady character. Humility in this sense is not weakness but strength, for it keeps you from being inflated or crushed by voices outside yourself. This detachment also would you to enjoy praise without clinging to it. When kind words come, you can accept them with gratitude, knowing they are pleasant but not essential. When criticism comes, you can hear it without despair, knowing it may contain truth but does not define you. By holding both lightly, you maintain balance. The mind remains calm, not rising too high or sinking too low. The Stoics compared life to a play in which you perform your role with excellence, but do not control the audience. Some may applaud, others may jeer, but your duty is not to chase their reaction. Your duty is to perform your role with dignity, according to nature and reason. The audience's opinion passes. The quality of your performance remains. This way of living also guards against hypocrisy. Many act one way in public to gain praise, and another way in private when no one watches. But when you detach from judgment, you act consistently, whether observed or not. Integrity becomes your guide, and your life grows simpler, for you no longer juggle appearances. Consistency of character is a greater prize than any applause. Detachment from praise and blame also aligns with freedom from externals. Just as wealth, possessions, and status do not determine happiness, neither do the judgments of others. Both praise and blame belong to the realm of things outside your control. To depend on them is to surrender your peace. To release them is to reclaim sovereignty over your own soul. This practice must be reinforced daily, for the pull of recognition is strong. Each time you feel elated by praise, remind yourself, this does not make me more virtuous. Each time you feel crushed by blame, remind yourself, this does not make me less. Over time, the habit strengthens, and the grip of opinion loosens. You begin to live with greater independence, guided by reason alone. In the end, detaching from praise and blame is not about indifference to people, but about fidelity to virtue. You can still care for others, still value relationships, still act with kindness, but you do so because it is right, not because you crave applause or fear condemnation. Virtue is its own reward, and integrity is its own defense. And so the path continues, from seeing all humanity as one family where justice and compassion unite us, to detaching from praise and blame, where you secure your inner freedom against the shifting voices of the crowd. Together, these disciplines ensure that your peace is not fragile, for it rests not on fortune, not on possessions, not on applause, but on the steady ground of virtue, which no external judgment can alter. By learning to detach from praise and blame, you secure your freedom from the unstable judgments of others. Your worth no longer rises or falls with their approval, and your virtue remains intact regardless of their voices. Yet the question naturally follows, how then should you live among others if you do not seek their applause or fear their criticism? How do you share what you have learned? The Stoics taught that the answer is not in preaching, but in example. Philosophy is not meant to be shouted at others, but to be embodied, lived in such a way that it speaks without words. To lead by example is to make your life itself the teaching. Words are easily dismissed. They can sound hollow if they do not match the speaker's actions. A person who preaches self-control but indulges every passion convinces no one. A person who lectures on justice but acts with selfishness only invites contempt. But when words and deeds are united, when virtue is visible in conduct, it carries a weight that no speech can equal. To embody Stoic values is to show others their power in practice. And that silent demonstration persuades more deeply than any argument. Leading by example begins with consistency. When your actions align with your principles, people notice even if you say nothing. They see the patience with which you meet difficulty, the calm with which you face insult, the fairness with which you treat others. Such conduct plants seeds in the minds of those who watch. They may not say it aloud, but they wonder what allows this person to remain steady when others break. Your steadiness becomes a quiet invitation for them to examine their own way of living. This method also preserves humility. Preaching often carries the hidden weight of pride, the desire to be seen as wise, to correct others, to stand above them. But leading by example requires no such display. You live your values not to impress, but because they are right. Humility strengthens your credibility, for people sense when you act from sincerity rather than superiority. They may resist lectures, but they cannot ignore integrity. Another strength of example is that it respects the freedom of others. No one is forced to follow. They are free to observe, to reflect, to decide for themselves. This respect mirrors the Stoic belief that you can control only your own choices, not the choices of others. By embodying virtue without forcing it, you fulfill your responsibility to live well, while allowing others their own path. This approach avoids conflict and invites growth without compulsion. Example also proves philosophy practical. Abstract ideas can seem distant until they are lived. People may doubt that self-discipline is possible, or that anger can be restrained, or that simplicity brings peace. But when they see these qualities embodied in someone they know, philosophy becomes real. It shifts from theory to evidence. You demonstrate that these values are not unreachable ideals, but living possibilities. This discipline also trains patience. Leading by example is often slow, for change in others does not happen instantly. You may live with integrity for years before someone is moved by it. But the Stoics taught that your duty is to live rightly, not to guarantee results. By focusing on your own conduct, you remain steady, even if others do not follow. The fruit of example ripens in its own time, beyond your control. Leading by example also deepens your own practice. Knowing that others may observe you encourages greater consistency. You strive to align your actions more closely with your principles, not from vanity, but from the recognition that your conduct influences others. In this way, the responsibility of example strengthens your own discipline. It becomes another form of training, reminding you daily that virtue is lived, not only studied. This way of living also transforms relationships. When you embody patience, you invite patience in return. When you live with fairness, you encourage fairness in others. When you practice calm, you create an atmosphere where conflict eases. Influence spreads quietly through example, shaping not only individuals but entire communities. One person's conduct can shift the tone of a household, a workplace, even a society. Example also prevents hypocrisy. When you commit to leading by action rather than words, you cannot hide behind speeches. Every day becomes a test. Are you living the values you admire, or only speaking of them? This honesty protects you from the corruption of empty rhetoric. It forces you to embody philosophy sincerely. For without action, you have nothing to teach. The Stoics often reminded themselves that philosophy is medicine for the soul, not entertainment for debate. Medicine heals only when applied, not when described. In the same way, Stoic values transform only when lived. To preach without living is like offering medicine while refusing to take it yourself. To live the values is to prove their healing power by your own steadiness and joy. This practice also builds resilience against frustration. When others resist your advice or ignore your words, preaching easily turns to anger. But when you focus on example, there is no frustration, for you are not trying to force change. You simply live well, knowing that your actions are within your control. Whether others respond is theirs to decide. This detachment frees you from disappointment and keeps your peace intact. Leading by example also strengthens authenticity. You are not performing philosophy for an audience, but integrating it into your daily life. Authenticity resonates more deeply than performance. People are drawn to those whose actions flow naturally from principle, without pretense. This authenticity inspires trust, which no amount of lecturing can create. Finally, to lead by example fulfills the highest aim of Stoicism, to live in harmony with reason and nature. Your duty is not to change the world by words alone, but to embody wisdom in the way you live. If others learn from you, it is because they see the strength of virtue in action, not because they were compelled by argument. Your life becomes your teaching, your conduct, your philosophy, your presence, your message. And so the path extends from detachment, from judgment, where you free yourself from the weight of others' opinions, to leading by example, where you allow your life itself to be the lesson. In this way, Stoicism ceases to be a set of ideas and becomes a living force. You teach not by telling, but by being. And in being, you show others the freedom, steadiness, and joy that philosophy makes possible. By choosing to lead through example instead of preaching, you show the world that philosophy is not something to be argued over, but something to be lived. Actions carry a weight that words cannot, and the steady life of virtue often speaks louder than the sharpest lecture. Yet even in embodying Stoic values, there is a deeper practice that nourishes the soul and makes the path lighter. That practice is gratitude, the conscious acknowledgement of life's gifts, both great and small, without clinging to them as possessions. Gratitude transforms how you see the world, reminding you daily that even in hardship, abundance surrounds you. Gratitude begins with the recognition that nothing is owed. Life itself is not a debt the universe had to pay you. It is a gift freely given. To open your eyes each morning, to breathe air, to feel the warmth of the sun, to hear the sound of another's voice. These are not guaranteed. They arrive without your command, and they may vanish at any time. When you remember this, even the simplest moments shine with significance. The Stoics taught that gratitude does not require luxury. In fact, it flourishes best in simplicity. A plain meal satisfies when eaten with thankfulness, while a feast without gratitude feels hollow. A small act of kindness warms the heart when received with humility, while endless favors leave the entitled ungrateful. Gratitude is not about the size of the gift, but the clarity of vision. It asks you to see what is already here, to stop overlooking blessings because they are ordinary. One of the greatest gifts is nature itself. The earth sustains you without demanding payment. The seasons turn, bringing food and growth. Rivers quench thirst. Trees provide shelter. The sky offers light. To walk outside and notice the rhythm of the natural world is to see abundance all around. Gratitude for nature roots you in humility, reminding you that you are not separate from the world, but part of it, sustained by forces far greater than yourself. Gratitude also extends to the community around you. Every life is supported by the labor, kindness, and sacrifices of others. The bread you eat was baked by someone's hands. The clothes you wear stitched by another's effort. The knowledge you hold preserved by generations before you. Gratitude reminds you that independence is never absolute. You stand on the shoulders of countless unseen contributors. This awareness dissolves arrogance and replaces it with respect for the web of humanity that sustains your life. The practice also guards against entitlement. When you believe you are owed comfort, recognition, or success, you grow restless when they do not arrive. Gratitude breaks this illusion. It reminds you that nothing is guaranteed, and that what you receive is more than nothing. This shift transforms dissatisfaction into contentment. You no longer measure life by what is missing, but by what is present. Gratitude does not mean ignoring hardship. The Stoics knew that life is filled with loss, pain, and change. But even within difficulty, gratitude can live. You can be grateful for the strength suffering builds, for the lessons adversity teaches, for the resilience trials awaken. Gratitude does not erase sorrow, but it softens its sting by showing that even in loss, something remains to be honored. Practicing gratitude also strengthens moderation. When you are thankful for what you have, the pull of excessive desire weakens. You no longer hunger endlessly for more, because you recognize the value of what is already in your hands. This contentment frees you from the restless chase of pleasures and possessions, grounding happiness in the present rather than in future acquisition. Another benefit is how gratitude reshapes relationships. When you appreciate the people in your life, not as guarantees but as gifts, you treat them with greater care. Words of kindness flow more easily, patience deepens, and forgiveness becomes more natural. You stop taking love for granted and begin to honor it as the rare treasure it is. Gratitude strengthens bonds because it transforms familiarity into reverence. Gratitude also builds resilience. In times of difficulty, it is easy to focus only on what has been taken. But when you train yourself to notice what remains, you find strength. Even in illness, there may be the gift of companionship. Even in poverty, there may be the gift of knowledge or character. Even in grief, there may be the gift of memory. Gratitude redirects the mind from emptiness to abundance, and this redirection provides the courage to endure. The practice requires daily attention. Gratitude is not a feeling that always appears naturally. It is a discipline that must be cultivated each day. Take time to acknowledge what life has given. Breath, food, shelter, friendship, opportunity. Write it, speak it, or reflect on it silently. This simple habit reshapes the mind, training it to notice blessings before it notices lacks. Over time, gratitude becomes the natural lens through which you see the world. Gratitude also brings balance to success. When fortune favors you, gratitude keeps pride in check. You remember that much of what you enjoy is not solely your achievement, but the result of countless factors beyond your control. Opportunity, support, timing. Gratitude grounds success in humility, ensuring that abundance does not breed arrogance, but instead deepens appreciation. Even toward fate itself, gratitude can be practiced. The Stoics taught amorati, the love of fate, not only as acceptance, but as gratitude for whatever life brings. To say thank you, not only for joy but for struggle, is to embrace the fullness of existence. Gratitude in this sense becomes a philosophy of life, a steady affirmation that every moment, pleasant or painful, belongs and has value. The strength of gratitude lies in how it transforms perspective. It does not change the external world, but it changes how you see it. The same life that feels empty without gratitude feels abundant with it. The same day that feels wasted in complaint feels rich when viewed with appreciation. Gratitude does not demand new gifts. It reveals the worth of those already present. And so, the Stoic path deepens further. From leading by example, where philosophy becomes visible in your actions, you move into the practice of gratitude, where philosophy becomes visible in your vision. Gratitude turns life itself into a gift, not something to cling to, but something to honor each day. By acknowledging the generosity of nature, life, and community without attachment, you live more fully, more humbly, and with a joy that cannot be shaken by loss, for it sees abundance, even in the simplest of moments. Gratitude grounds the heart in appreciation, teaching you to see the countless gifts that life provides, not as possessions to clutch, but as blessings to honor. Yet gratitude, when practiced deeply, naturally flows into another truth, that the richest joy does not come from gathering more, but from learning to need less. The Stoics called this sufficiency and simplicity, the discipline of finding contentment in the little that is necessary, rather than exhausting yourself in the endless chase for abundance. Sufficiency and simplicity is freedom from the illusion that happiness lies in accumulation. The world constantly whispers that you are incomplete until you own more, earn more, or achieve more. But the mind that believes this never rests, for desire multiplies faster than it can be satisfied. Simplicity breaks this cycle. It shows that peace is not found in the mountain of possessions, but in the clear recognition that very little is required for a good life. This practice does not reject wealth or comfort outright. The Stoics never said that possessions are evil. Rather, they warned that dependence on them enslaves the soul. A person who believes they cannot be happy without luxury is fragile, because fortune can strip it away in a moment. But the one who can live content with the bare essentials is unshakable. They may enjoy comfort when it comes, but they do not collapse when it goes. Sufficiency is closely tied to nature. Nature requires little food to nourish, shelter to protect, water to sustain, companionship to support. All beyond this is excess, often pleasant, but never essential. To live simply is to align your life more closely with nature's rhythm. You reduce complication, avoid waste, and focus on what sustains both body and soul. The less cluttered your life becomes, the clearer your vision grows. Simplicity also strengthens independence. When your happiness requires much, you become dependent on external conditions, wealth, possessions, approval. But when your needs are modest, you are freer. Fortune cannot easily threaten you because you ask so little from it. This independence is not isolation, but strength, the ability to live steadily in both abundance and scarcity without losing peace. There is a hidden joy in simplicity that abundance often conceals. A piece of bread tastes sweeter when hunger sharpens appreciation. A small home feels warmer when love fills it. A plain cloak provides more satisfaction when you do not crave grandeur. The mind that practices simplicity learns to savor what is present rather than chase what is absent. In this savoring lies a joy far deeper than indulgence. Sufficiency also reshapes ambition. When you no longer define success by accumulation, you free yourself from endless competition. You no longer need to measure your worth by surpassing others. Instead, you measure it by living with virtue and integrity. Ambition shifts from acquiring more to becoming more just, more disciplined, more courageous, more wise. Simplicity redirects energy from the pursuit of things to the cultivation of character. This discipline also protects against anxiety. Much of human restlessness comes from fear of loss of wealth, of status, of possessions. But when your needs are few, there is little to lose. The fear shrinks, and with it, anxiety fades. You discover that peace does not depend on controlling fortune, but on limiting desire. Sufficiency and simplicity also fosters gratitude more deeply. When you live with little, you see more clearly the value of what you have. The smallest comfort becomes a gift, the simplest meal, a feast, the quietest moment, a treasure. Gratitude and simplicity are twins. Each strengthens the other. Gratitude teaches you to notice blessings, and simplicity teaches you to be satisfied with them. Living simply also cultivates humility. Excess often breeds arrogance, convincing people that wealth or luxury makes them superior. But simplicity reminds you that all human beings share the same basic needs. Whether king or servant, all require food, rest, and care. Recognizing this dissolves pride and restores perspective. You are no greater because you own more, no lesser because you own less. Worth lies not in possessions, but in the character with which you live. This practice extends into relationships as well. When you are content with little, you do not use people as tools for gain. You value them for who they are, not for what they can provide. Simplicity clears away the fog of self-interest, allowing genuine connection. It frees you to give without calculation, to love without dependence, to support without demand. Simplicity also nourishes the soul by creating space for reflection. A life cluttered with possessions, obligations, and distractions leaves little room for silence. But when you live with less, time and attention return to you. You can reflect, read, walk, converse, and simply be. This space enriches the mind and strengthens the spirit, offering a depth of peace that constant busyness cannot provide. The Stoics themselves practiced this discipline deliberately. Seneca, though wealthy, often ate coarse bread and slept on hard surfaces to remind himself that he could live well without luxury. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, reminded himself daily that simplicity was enough, for power and grandeur did not guarantee peace. Their wisdom was not in rejecting fortune, but in refusing to be its prisoner. This way of life also prepares you for adversity. When you live simply by choice, you are ready when simplicity is forced upon you. Poverty, exile, or loss may strip comforts away, but they do not strip peace from the one who has already trained in sufficiency. You meet hardship with less fear because you have already proven to yourself that life can be lived well with little. Simplicity also heightens appreciation of beauty. When life is not drowned in excess, you notice details that might otherwise be ignored. The sound of rain, the pattern of leaves, the laughter of a friend. Simplicity sharpens the senses, teaching you to see richness where others see nothing. Joy becomes available not in extraordinary moments, but in ordinary ones waiting for attention. This practice must be cultivated gradually. Begin by questioning desires. Is this a need or is it excess? Will this possession bring lasting peace or only a brief distraction? Each honest answer moves you closer to sufficiency. Practice living with less. Skip luxuries, reduce distractions, simplify routines. Each act of restraint reminds you that peace does not require much. Over time, the habit grows until sufficiency feels natural, not forced. In the end, sufficiency and simplicity is not deprivation, but liberation. It frees you from the endless hunger of desire, from the fragility of dependence, from the arrogance of excess. It grounds you in the truth that joy is not bought, collected, or earned in accumulation. It is discovered in the clarity of needing little and appreciating much. And so the Stoic path deepens once more. From gratitude, where you learn to see life's gifts, you move into sufficiency and simplicity, where you learn to be content with little. Together, they weave a life of peace, one that does not chase endlessly after more, but finds joy in enough. In this simplicity, happiness ceases to be fragile and becomes steady, for it rests not on abundance, but on the sufficiency of the soul. By embracing sufficiency and simplicity, you learn that joy is not hidden in endless accumulation, but revealed in appreciating what is already present. Life becomes lighter, clearer, and more peaceful when you free yourself from the restless chase for more. Yet even with simplicity as a guide, the mind still needs direction. Examples of what such a life looks like in action. The Stoics knew this well and urged the use of role models, men and women who embodied the virtues of courage, wisdom, justice, and discipline. To reflect on their lives is to find not idols to worship, but companions who light the path. When your own steps falter, role models matter, because philosophy is not only theory, but practice. Words on a page can inspire, but living examples provide proof. When you read Marcus Aurelius, meditating on patience in the face of power, you see what it means to govern with humility. When you hear Epictetus, once a slave, teaching freedom of the mind despite bondage of the body, you see resilience made flesh. When you study Seneca's letters on wealth, time, and mortality, you find wisdom sharpened by reflection in the midst of luxury and political turmoil. Each offers a different lens, but together they show how philosophy becomes life. Marcus Aurelius serves as a reminder that power does not excuse weakness of character. He ruled the Roman Empire, yet his meditations reveal a man constantly training his mind to stay humble, to remain patient, to see every day as borrowed. His reflections show that even in the highest station, virtue remains the true measure. For those who feel crushed by responsibility, his example teaches that duty need not destroy peace if met with clarity and discipline. Epictetus demonstrates that external chains cannot enslave the mind. Born into slavery, crippled in body, he nevertheless spoke with unshakable authority on freedom, teaching that no one can force you to abandon your reason or your dignity. His life proves that fortune's harshest blows cannot strip away the inner citadel if you choose to guard it. For those who feel trapped by circumstance, his voice reminds them that their choices, not their chains, define their worth. Seneca provides another form of guidance, navigating wealth, politics, and influence without losing sight of philosophy. He acknowledged his own struggles, his own contradictions. Yet his writings remain a treasury of reflections on time, mortality, and the fleeting nature of possessions. His honesty reveals that philosophy is not the absence of failure, but the practice of returning again and again to virtue. For those living amid complexity and temptation, Seneca's words remind them that philosophy is not abandoned when imperfect, but is most needed precisely then. Role models such as these provide more than inspiration. They provide correction. When you are tempted to despair, you recall Epictetus enduring greater trials with dignity. When pride threatens to swell, you remember Marcus Aurelius reminding himself that he too will soon be dust. When greed whispers, you hear Seneca teaching that time, not wealth, is the most precious currency. By reflecting on their lives, you measure your own, not with envy, but with motivation to rise closer to the standard they embody. This practice also guards against arrogance. Without role models, it is easy to believe your progress is great simply because you compare yourself to those who live thoughtlessly. But when you measure yourself against those who lived with wisdom, under greater trials, you see how much further you can grow. Role models humble you without discouraging you, for they show both the possibility of virtue and the distance still to travel. Role models also prevent philosophy from becoming abstract. It is easy to speak of courage, justice, or moderation in general terms, but harder to know how to apply them in daily life. By studying examples, you see these virtues embodied in action. Marcus treating even his critics with fairness. Epictetus turning misfortune into strength. Seneca urging daily reflection to guard against wasted time. Their lives offer patterns you can adapt to your own, making philosophy practical rather than distant. The Stoics also believed that role models need not be limited to the famous. The examples of ordinary people, parents, teachers, friends, even strangers can serve as guides if they live with integrity. To recognize virtue in another, however small, is to be reminded that philosophy is not limited to the pages of books, but can be found in every corner of life. Every act of patience, kindness, or courage becomes a quiet lesson if you are willing to see it. Choosing role models wisely is essential. Not all who appear great embody virtue. The world often celebrates wealth, beauty, or power, but these are unstable measures. True role models are those who embody principles, not possessions. They are not perfect, but persistent, not flawless, but faithful to the pursuit of virtue. By reflecting on their lives, you strengthen your own ability to discern what truly deserves respect and imitation. The act of reflecting on role models also deepens self-examination. As you admire their qualities, you ask, do I live with similar patience? Do I meet hardship with comparable courage? Do I value time as much as they did? These questions sharpen your awareness and inspire daily improvement. Role models serve not as distant heroes, but as mirrors reflecting both what is possible and what you must still cultivate. There is also comfort in role models. Life can feel isolating, as though your struggles are unique. But when you study those who came before, you realize that the same fears, desires, and trials have been faced by countless others. This continuity reassures you that your challenges are not strange, and that solutions have been tested across time. You are not alone in your struggle for virtue. You walk a path already traveled by many. At the same time, role models remind you of mortality. Marcus, Epictetus, and Seneca all lived, struggled, and died as you will. Their greatness lies not in escaping death, but in living wisely while alive. To reflect on them is to be reminded that your time too is limited, and that the best way to honor their lessons is not by memorizing their words, but by embodying them before your own life ends. Using role models is also a safeguard. against despair in a corrupt or chaotic world. When injustice surrounds you, cynicism may whisper that virtue is futile. But recalling examples of those who live justly in harsher conditions restores hope. They prove that virtue is always possible, even in times of darkness, and that one person's integrity can shine brightly, even when the world resists it. Ultimately, role models are not meant to replace your judgment, but to guide it. You cannot live Marcus's life, nor Epictetus's, nor Seneca's. You must live your own with your own trials and duties, but their examples illuminate what is possible. They show you that courage can exist in power, in poverty, in wealth, in exile. They remind you that virtue is not bound to circumstance, but to choice. And so the path deepens again. From sufficiency in simplicity, where you learn to live with less, you now move toward reflection on role models, where you learn to live with guidance. By looking to those who embodied Stoic values, you strengthen your own resolve, correct your own weaknesses, and remind yourself that you are not alone. Their lives echo through time, not as distant history, but as present companions, urging you to rise each day closer to the life of virtue. By turning to role models, you find guidance in the lives of those who walked the Stoic path before you. Their examples shine like steady torches in the dark, reminding you that virtue is not only possible, but practical in every circumstance, whether in the palace, in exile, or in chains. Yet, even with wisdom borrowed from those who came before, life still demands that you govern your own choices in the heat of the moment. It is here, in the instant, when events press upon you, that philosophy must prove its strength. The Stoics urged one practice above many: respond, do not react. Between what happens to you and what you do next lies a space, and in that space rests the power to decide with reason rather than impulse. Most people move through life reacting automatically. A harsh word is met with anger, a threat with fear, an insult with envy, a loss with despair. These reactions feel natural, but they are not inevitable. They are judgments made so quickly that they seem irresistible. To respond, however, is to pause, to step into that small space between stimulus and action, and to choose deliberately. This pause, though brief, transforms everything. It turns you from a slave of circumstance into a governor of your own mind. The pause does not deny emotion. Anger may still rise, fear may still stir, envy may still whisper. But when you allow yourself a moment of reflection, you create distance between the feeling and the action. You say to yourself, "This emotion has appeared, but it does not command me. I will decide if it deserves expression or if another path is wiser." In this moment, reason reclaims its rightful place as guide. Responding rather than reacting also protects relationships. Quick anger often wounds more deeply than the original offense. Words spoken in haste cannot be retrieved, and actions taken in impulse often leave scars. But when you pause, you give yourself the chance to answer with patience, to speak with clarity, to act with fairness. This discipline turns conflict into opportunity for understanding, and misunderstanding into space for reconciliation. The practice also builds inner peace. A life of constant reaction is exhausting, for you are always at the mercy of events. Every insult disturbs you, every setback shakes you, every disappointment consumes you. But when you respond with deliberation, you free yourself from this turbulence. External events may still occur, but they no longer control your state of mind. You decide what enters your inner citadel and what remains outside. Responding also sharpens courage. Fear often thrives on automatic reaction, the instinct to flee, to avoid, to surrender. But when you pause, you remind yourself that fear is a judgment, not a command. You can choose to act despite it, to move forward with reason as your companion. This choice, repeated, builds bravery, not by erasing fear, but by refusing to let it dictate your steps. The same is true of desire. Many indulgences capture people because they act without thought, giving into impulse before reflection can intervene. By pausing, you regain the power to ask, will this action serve me or enslave me? Will it strengthen my character or weaken it? This moment of questioning transforms desire into a chance for discipline, making pleasure a servant rather than a master. This practice also nurtures justice. Quick reactions are often selfish, concerned only with defending pride or satisfying emotion. But when you pause, you can consider the effect of your response on others. You can ask, is this action fair? Is it kind? Is it aligned with the common good? Justice requires deliberation, and deliberation requires space. The pause before action ensures that your choices serve not only yourself, but the larger community. The Stoics trained for this discipline through reflection and rehearsal. They reminded themselves daily that insults, losses, and hardships would come, and they prepared their minds to meet them. By expecting difficulty, they lessened the shock when it arrived. And when it came, they paused, remembering that the event itself carried no judgment, only their interpretation did. This practice allowed them to choose responses that aligned with reason, not passion. Responding, instead of reacting, also expands freedom. Many believe freedom is doing whatever impulse suggests, but this is slavery to emotion. True freedom is the ability to act according to principle, regardless of impulse. When you respond with choice, you are free. When you react without thought, you are bound. The pause is the doorway to this freedom, for it allows reason to govern where impulse once ruled. This discipline must be practiced daily, for life constantly tests it. Each delay, insult, or disappointment is a chance to rehearse. At first, the pause may feel small, almost invisible, but over time it grows. You learn to breathe before speaking, to think before acting, to reflect before deciding. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, until response replaces reaction as the rhythm of your life. The benefits extend beyond yourself. When you respond instead of react, you become a source of steadiness for others. In times of conflict, your calm invites calm. In moments of fear, your courage inspires courage. In situations of injustice, your fairness models fairness. By mastering the pause, you not only protect your own peace, but contribute to the peace of those around you. The power of responding lies in its subtlety. It does not require grand gestures or dramatic acts. It requires only a moment of awareness, a breath before decision, a reminder that you are not compelled by events. This small act, repeated, reshapes your entire life. It turns chaos into order, weakness into strength, reaction into response. And so the Stoic path continues. From reflecting on role models who embody virtue, you move to practicing the pause, the discipline of responding instead of reacting. In this space between event and action, you reclaim your freedom, protect your peace, and align your choices with reason. It is a small space, but within it lies the whole of happiness, for it is there that you decide not only what to do, but who to be. By learning to respond rather than react, you discover the strength of the pause, the space where reason guides you instead of passion. That pause grants freedom from impulse and transforms conflict into clarity. Yet even with this discipline, life does not grow soft. Challenges, setbacks, and trials will continue to press against you. The Stoics knew this truth well, and they urged not only endurance but also a particular spirit in meeting adversity, a resilient optimism. It is the practice of expecting difficulties while still keeping a cheerful heart, a mindset that sees hardship not as an enemy, but as a natural part of life's rhythm. Resilient optimism is not blind positivity. It does not deny that pain is real or pretend that hardship is pleasant. Instead, it is the discipline of meeting challenges with confidence that they can be endured, that lessons can be drawn, and that joy can coexist with trial. It is a refusal to let darkness dictate the spirit, a choice to greet each day with courage and a steady outlook, no matter what it brings. This mindset begins with expectation. Too often people are shattered by hardship, not because it is unbearable, but because it was unexpected. They believed life would remain smooth, and when storms came, they were unprepared. The Stoics taught to anticipate difficulty, not with dread, but with readiness. By expecting trials, you are not crushed when they arrive. Instead, you meet them as a familiar guest, one you have prepared a place for in your mind. Optimism is built not on denial, but on perspective. When a challenge strikes, you can choose to see only its weight, or you can see the strength it awakens. A burden carried builds endurance. A loss suffered sharpens gratitude. A setback endured teaches patience. Resilient optimism looks at hardship and says, "This is heavy, but I will grow stronger in lifting it." This does not erase pain, but it reframes it, transforming it into a teacher rather than a thief. This discipline also depends on where you place your focus. You cannot control the storms of fortune, but you can control the state of your own mind. Optimism does not mean expecting the world to be gentle. It means choosing to meet whatever comes with a spirit unbroken. The world may be harsh, but within you can cultivate lightness, humor, and gratitude. By protecting your inner cheer, you deny misfortune the power to make you bitter. Resilient optimism also strengthens courage. Fear thrives when you believe difficulty will destroy you. But when you approach life with the conviction that hardship is survivable, fear shrinks. You step forward not because you know the road will be easy, but because you know you have the strength to walk it. This courage does not arise from illusions of control, but from trust in your own resilience. This practice also enriches relationships. A cheerful spirit amid difficulty lifts not only you, but those around you. Just as despair spreads, so too does optimism. When you remain steady and even lighthearted in trial, others find comfort in your example. You become a source of strength, showing that hardship need not consume joy. Your cheer does not deny suffering, but demonstrates that even within suffering, dignity and gratitude are possible. Resilient optimism also prevents despair from taking root. Life will present disappointments, and without optimism, these can accumulate into cynicism. Cynicism corrodes the soul, making you distrustful of joy, suspicious of kindness, and close to hope. The Stoics rejected this corrosion, insisting that, while pain is inevitable, bitterness is optional. Optimism protects the soul from hardening, keeping it open to goodness, even in harsh conditions. Another strength of this mindset is its alignment with nature. The seasons change, storms come and pass. The earth renews itself again and again. Life follows the same rhythm. Trials rise, and then they fade, replaced by new growth. To maintain cheerfulness amid hardship is to live in harmony with this rhythm. To trust that winter is not the end, but part of the cycle that makes spring possible. This perspective also deepens gratitude. When you learn to see blessings even in difficulty, gratitude becomes unshakable. A trial may strip comfort, but it may also reveal hidden strengths, deepen relationships, or clarify values. Resilient optimism trains you to look for these gifts without denying the pain. In this way, every challenge becomes not only something to endure, but something to learn from. Optimism must be trained daily. Just as muscles strengthen with repeated use, the mind learns cheerfulness through practice. Begin each day with a reminder. Difficulties will come, but they need not break my spirit. End each day by recalling what you faced and how you endured it, not with complaint, but with gratitude for your strength. Over time, this rhythm forms a habit of optimism so steady that it becomes your natural response to hardship. This discipline also clarifies the difference between what is yours and what is not. You cannot control whether fortune blesses or burdens, but you can always control your judgment of it. Optimism is a judgment, the choice to see hardship as bearable, to see trials as training, to see life as worth cherishing even in struggle. This choice remains yours alone, and no external event can take it. Resilient optimism is not naivety. It does not ignore cruelty or injustice, but it faces them with a spirit that refuses surrender. It acknowledges the darkness, but chooses not to live in it. It seeks the small sparks of light, acts of kindness, moments of beauty, lessons of endurance, and feeds them until they grow brighter. This is not weakness, but strength, for it requires discipline to maintain cheer when bitterness seems easier. Ultimately, Resilient optimism preserves joy as a companion in all conditions. Life will bring hardship, but it will also bring moments of laughter, friendship, beauty, and love. Optimism does not wait for perfect conditions to celebrate these things. It notices them even amid trial and holds them close. By doing so, it ensures that hardship never robs life of its sweetness. And so, the Stoic path widens once more. From responding instead of reacting, where reason governs impulse, you move into cultivating resilient optimism, where the spirit learns to face hardship with cheer. By expecting trials and yet choosing joy, you make your happiness unshakable. For it no longer depends on fortune's kindness, but on the strength of your own perspective. In this cheerfulness, even life's storms become part of the music, and you walk forward not with despair, but with steady hope. By cultivating resilient optimism, you learn to meet life's storms with a steady cheer, refusing to surrender your spirit to bitterness. You expect challenges, yet you remain open to gratitude, joy, and courage in the midst of trial. But optimism is not only a tool for enduring hardship, it prepares the mind to live in harmony with something larger than itself. The Stoics taught that the highest form of wisdom is to live in accord with nature, aligning your life with reason, virtue, and the natural order of existence. This is not about bending the world to your will, but about understanding your place within it and living in harmony with its flow. To live in accord with nature begins with recognizing that the universe has an order. Stars move in their patterns, seasons follow their cycles. Life rises and falls according to rhythms that are not random, but deeply woven into reality. Human beings are not exceptions to this order, they are part of it. The Stoics taught that reason is the distinctive gift of humanity, the faculty that connects us to the larger harmony. To live against reason is to live against nature. To live with reason is to find your place within the cosmic whole. This understanding directs you toward virtue. Nature has equipped you with the ability to think, to choose, to act with justice and wisdom. These capacities are not accidents. They are your role within the larger design. Just as a tree fulfills its nature by growing and a river by flowing, you fulfill your nature by living virtuously. Courage, discipline, fairness, and clarity are not merely moral preferences. They are the expression of your essence as a rational being. To abandon them is to betray yourself. To live by them is to align with the order of life itself. Living in accord with nature also means accepting impermanence. Everything in the universe changes. Seasons shift, bodies age, relationships evolve, and lives end. To fight this is to fight the very fabric of existence. Acceptance is not resignation, but recognition. Change is the natural rhythm, and to embrace it is to live truthfully. When you resist change, you suffer twice. Once from the event itself, and once from the refusal to accept it. When you align with nature, you allow life to move as it must, and peace follows. This perspective also deepens humility. To live in accord with nature is to see that you are not the center of the universe, but a part of its vast whole. The sun does not rise for you, the river does not flow for you, and the earth does not exist to serve your desires. You are a participant in a larger order, entrusted with reason, not for domination, but for harmony. Humility grows when you realize your place, not as master of all things, but as a contributor to the greater balance. At the same time, this alignment strengthens responsibility, because you share in reason. You share in the duty to act justly within the community of humanity. Living according to nature is not withdrawal, but engagement. Just as each part of the body must serve the whole, each person must serve the human family. Justice, compassion, and fairness are not optional virtues, but natural obligations rooted in the interconnectedness of life. Living in accord with nature also transforms how you handle adversity. When hardship comes, you remember this too, is part of the order. Storms cleanse, fire refines, Trials strengthen. Adversity is not chaos, but another thread in the larger design. By seeing it as natural, you strip it of unnecessary bitterness and approach it as material for growth. Every trial becomes another way the universe shapes you, and by cooperating rather than resisting, you remain at peace. This practice also reshapes desire. Nature provides what is necessary: food, rest, shelter, companionship. Much of what people crave beyond this is not natural but artificial, born of pride, greed, or comparison. To align with nature is to simplify desire, to seek only what sustains life and virtue. By doing so, you reduce dependence on fortune and free yourself from endless craving. Peace comes when you ask little and live in accordance with what is truly needed. Living in harmony with nature also invites gratitude. When you see yourself as part of a vast and ordered whole, you recognize the abundance that surrounds you, the air you breathe, the earth that sustains you, the reason that guides you. All are gifts of nature. Gratitude becomes not a momentary feeling, but a constant awareness of belonging. Even in loss, gratitude remains, for loss itself is part of the cycle that gives life meaning. This way of life also brings clarity to death. The Stoics did not deny death, but saw it as a natural event, as much a part of life as birth. To live in accord with nature is to accept mortality, not with fear, but with dignity. Death is not an interruption, but a completion, the return of your body to the earth and your breath to the air. To fear it is to misunderstand it. To accept it is to live more freely, unchained from the terror of endings. To align with nature also sharpens presence. Nature unfolds only in the present moment. The river flows now, the wind blows now, the sun warms now. The past is gone, the future uncertain, but the present is alive with the rhythm of nature. When you live in harmony with this truth, you stop scattering your mind across time and root yourself in the reality before you. Presence is not only peace, but fidelity to the order of life. The discipline of living in accord with nature also enriches relationships. When you see others as sharing in reason, you treat them as partners in the same order. Conflict softens, compassion deepens, justice becomes natural. You act not out of selfish gain, but out of recognition that your well-being is bound to the well-being of others. The harmony of nature is reflected in the harmony of human community, and to live justly is to mirror this greater balance. This practice requires vigilance. It is easy to forget the larger order and slip into selfishness, greed, or resistance. Daily reminders are necessary to recall that reason is your guide, that change is natural, that virtue is your true task. Each morning you can prepare to meet the day in harmony with nature, and each evening you can reflect on where you succeeded and where you strayed. In this rhythm, the alignment grows stronger. Ultimately, to live in accord with nature is to live with truth. You stop demanding that the world conform to your will, and instead, conform your will to the world's order. You stop resisting change, and instead, cooperate with it. You stop seeking happiness in excess, and instead find it in virtue. This truth does not promise ease, but it promises freedom. The freedom to live as you were meant to live as part of a greater whole, guided by reason, sustained by nature, anchored in virtue. And so, the Stoic journey reaches another height. From resilient optimism, where you learn to face challenges with cheer, you now rise to the discipline of living in accord with nature, where every breath, every choice, every acceptance aligns you with the deeper order of existence. Here lies the heart of Stoic happiness, not in bending life to your desires, but in aligning your desires with life itself. Happiness, the Stoics remind us, is not a gift of fortune, but the work of the soul. It is built each day through discipline, perspective, and alignment with what is truly ours to control. From choosing thoughts over outcomes, practicing presence and reframing adversity as training to embracing simplicity, gratitude, justice, and the unity of humanity, each step carves away illusion and reveals what cannot be taken. Inner freedom. The journey through these lessons is not about escaping the world, but about living in it with greater strength, clarity, and peace. To cultivate resilient optimism, to welcome fate, to live in accord with nature. This is how happiness ceases to depend on wealth, status, or praise, and becomes a steady flame within. The Stoic way is simple, but not easy. It asks for practice, honesty, and courage. But in return, it offers a joy untouched by loss, a freedom unshaken by change, and a life rich with meaning. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which Stoic practice spoke to you the most? Was it the call to simplify desires, the courage to reframe adversity, or the strength to detach from praise and blame? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflection may inspire someone else on their path. And if you found value here, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Together, we'll continue exploring timeless wisdom that strengthens the mind, steadies the heart, and brings us closer to the kind of happiness no external storm can take away.